I'd like to call the July 25th special meeting of the City of Post Falls Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Will you please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I'd like to welcome everybody. Again, if you wish to speak tonight on one of the public hearings, make sure that you grab one of those papers, fill it out. You can turn it in up front, and we will go ahead and get things started here momentarily.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, let's start with roll call.
Kimball,
Here.
Davis,
Here.
Ward,
Here.
Hamby. Here.
Ceremonies, announcements, appointments, and presentations. I believe we have something to announce.
On a fun note, it's National Culinarians Day, so if you have time, have fun with some food tonight.
There you go. Any amendments? Any amendments to the agenda this evening?
None.
None. Declaration of conflict ex parte contacts or site visits, commissioners?
No, sir. No. None.
Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the consent calendar, Mr. Manley.
Yeah, item A is the minutes from the July 12th, 2022 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Item B is the zoning recommendation for the Barnum's addition zone change, file number ZC223. Item C is the reason decision for the KCF station number 3 special use permit, file number SUP221.
Okay, commissioners, hopefully had a chance to take a look. Entertain a motion at this time.
I move to approve this consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for vote.
Hamby,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Item number 3, unfinished and or old business. None?
Correct.
That will bring us to, actually, I'll step back. That'll bring us to citizen issues. This section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the commission on an issue that is not on the agenda. Persons wishing to speak will have 5 minutes. Comments related to pending public hearings, including decisions that may be appealed to city council, are out of order and should be held for that public hearing. Is there anyone here for general citizen issues that wishes to speak this evening? Seeing none, then we will move on to our public hearings. Again, if you wish to speak in regards to any of these public hearings, make sure that you fill the paperwork out and turn it in as we go ahead and get things rolling. And we will go ahead and open up the first action item. Zoning recommendation for Froehlich zoning change. I'll let you read the file number.
All right, good evening, Commissioners. Laura Jones, Associate Planner with the City of Post Falls, and I'm introducing you to the Froehlich zone change.
Can you speak up a little?
We can adjust the microphone in the back, yes.
It's case file ZC225. The owners and applicants are Mark Loudon and Zach Froehlich. The requested action tonight is to provide recommendation to City Council for the zoning designation of medium-density residential R2 from the existing single-family R1 zoning on approximately 1.88 acres. I'm going to pause the presentation here for a second and let John talk to you guys about the Local Land Use Planning Act.
Yes, there's a few slides here that I'll probably be having with all land use applications dealing with potential housing. I won't go over them in the next presentations. I'll just go over it once. But the Title 67, Chapter 65 is the Land Use Planning Act, LUPA. Go to the next. And the purpose of the Land Use Planning Act, you see a lot of them are underlined here. You're looking at protecting private property rights. It looks at looking at for low-cost housing and mobile home parks. Looks to encourage urban and urban-type development in incorporated cities and to avoid undue concentration of population and overcrowding of land. So I looked up what they meant by undue. What they mean by that is unjustified. So you're looking at your comp plan. So are you creating densification in areas that aren't supported by your comp plan? Are you countering the review criteria, going counter to the comp plan, therefore being undue? Planning duties, kind of just a general overview of what the duties are. Go to the next. Looking at housing, the housing section within the land use planning looks at the planning duties. We're looking at provisions for safe, sanitary, and adequate housing, low-cost conventional housing. It entertains looking at the siting of manufactured housing and mobile homes and subdivisions, and they want to maintain a competitive market and for each housing type. And so the framework here in the planning duties was to, as best as possible, create a competitive market driven and a diverse housing sector, more or less. So that pretty much, just an overview. I won't go over it in the next presentations.
I appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
All right, moving back to the Froehlich zone change. The project location is on the northwest corner of North Cecil Road and East 16th Avenue. You can see it indicated on the map in red. The current land use is large lot residential. A natural feature of the site is that it's over the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. Ross Point Water District is the water purveyor, and wastewater will be handled by the City of Post Falls. Looking at the surrounding zoning, to the south and the west is R1 zoning as it's currently zoned. The site that we're looking at is currently zoned R1. And then to the north and the east are developed properties within Kootenai County's jurisdiction. So we're looking at kind of one of the county pockets within the city. So looking at the zone change review criteria, the first is that amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the future land use map. The future land use map designates this as a low density residential area. You can see the future land use map here. Again, you can see the property there on the northwest corner of Cecil and 16th, right here where the mouse is. You've got other low density residential in the area, and then medium residential in the area here where the mouse is, that kind of orange color. And again, this is just the future land use map, so it's a guide on how the city should develop or could develop. Looking at the comp plan, the principal use and character of the low-density residential zoning designation, this category encompasses all types of single-family residential uses up to 8 dwelling units per acre, and also supports land uses such as parks, schools, and public facilities. Densities may vary as appropriate to the location, street and infrastructure capacities, and planned development patterns and compatibility with the existing development. And you can see that R2 is one of the designated implemented zoning districts. Looking at the focus area of the comp plan, it is within the Central Island focus area. You can see it on the map here with the star right here. And the comp plan states that this area should promote infill development, and it supports development patterns that are interconnected and that provide pedestrian connectivity to all multi-use paths and trails. Looking at the second review criteria, amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the goals and policies found in the comprehensive plan. So staff went through the goals and policies in Appendix B and listed several goals and policies that might be applicable to this zone change. The first is Goal 1, and that is to grow and sustain a balanced, resilient economy for Post Falls, providing community prosperity and fiscal health. Goal 2, maintain and improve the provision of high-quality, affordable, and efficient community services in Post Falls. Goal 6, maintain and improve Post Falls transportation network on pace and in concert with the need and objectives. You can see on this map, again, 16th running east-west and North Cecil running north-south. And with this, the developer would be responsible for putting in frontage improvements, so curb, sidewalk, gutter, street trees, all of the additional frontage improvements. Goal 7 is to plan for and establish types and quantities of land uses in Post Falls supporting community needs and the city's long-term sustainability. And then Goal 12 is to maintain the city of Post Falls' long-term fiscal health. Going into the policies that support the goals is policy 1, support land use patterns that maintain or enhance community levels of service, foster the long-term fiscal health of the community, maintain and enhance residential quality of life, promote compatible, well-designed development, and then implement the goals and policies of the comp plan. I'll be getting into more of these in the future slides, but we're going to go on to policy 2, which I'll get into a little more in depth in the future slides also. Policy 2 is to apply or revise zoning designations with careful consideration of factors including the future land use map and compatibility with surrounding land uses. We've touched on both of those already. We'll be getting into the infrastructure and service plans and the existing and future traffic patterns, as well as other goals and policies of the comp plan, related master plan, and or facility plans. Continuing on, policy 8 encourages compatible infill development and redevelopment of vacant and underutilized properties. And I kind of mentioned that this is within the county pocket. It's already annexed, but it's in that area that's currently fairly undeveloped or underdeveloped. Policy 15 is to ensure that adequate land is available for future housing needs, helping serve residents of all ages, incomes, and abilities through the provision of diverse housing types and price levels. And John touched on that a little bit with the Land Use Planning Act. Policy 27 is to work to improve street connectivity in all areas of Post Falls, improving walkability, public health and safety, and transportation efficiency. And again, I mentioned the frontage improvements are the developer's responsibility if and when this property does develop. Looking at the next zone change review criteria is that zoning is assigned following consideration of such items as street classification, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, and geographic and natural features. Again, I've touched on that this is over the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. We've talked about the future land use, and it's in a low-density residential area. Looking at traffic patterns and street classification, both Cecil Road and 16th Avenue are major collector roadways, and they can both accommodate 4,000 to 12,000 vehicle trips per day. Looking at this diagram, you can see that as speed of roads increases, you usually get your higher intensity uses, your commercial, your industrial. As the speed of higher intensity uses, your commercial, your industrial. As the speed is reduced, you get your lower street classifications and your lower intensity zoning, like your single family residential. And as I mentioned, 16th and Cecil are both major collectors, so they fall right in the middle with kind of that medium density use. Looking at review criteria D, commercial and high-density residential zoning is typically assigned along streets with higher road classification. This isn't a high-density site or a commercial, so this is not applicable to this specific zone change. Next zone change review criteria is that limited or neighborhood commercial and lower density residential zoning is typically assigned for properties as they proceed further away from the higher intensity urban activity. You can see again on the map in red the location of the site. It's within that half-mile area from both 41 and Mullen. So it is a little bit further from the high-intensity urban areas. The last review criteria is that industrial zoning is typically assigned for properties with sufficient access to major transportation routes and may be situated away from residential zoning. Again, this is not an industrial application for zone change, and it's not near industrial, so this is not applicable. This is a list of agencies that were notified and given a chance to comment on the zone change request. Of those agencies, we had the Post Falls Police Department comment that they were neutral. Kootenai Fire and Rescue is reserving their comments for when the site develops and it goes through the site plan review process. The Department of Environmental Quality doesn't have any comments at this stage of development. Post Falls School District was neutral, and the Post Falls Highway District was in support. And with that, I can stand for questions.
What is on the, so it would be the southeast corner? So it's out of city.
It's within,
Medium zoning.
Well, that's just what the future land use map
Yeah.
shows it as. It's not in the city, so it
it's not
doesn't
in the
actually-
city, it's the county's jurisdiction. So you can see here, there's single-family homes. It looks like this might be a multifamily site here.
Yeah,
Looks
that's
like
kind
there's
of what I was
potentially
trying to
mobile
figure out
homes
what
there.
It's that
the-
trailer park, yeah.
Mhm.
And then the parcels across the street, so across 16th,
Yep.
from that parcel I just was talking.
here?
Yeah. How large are those? Do you know?
I don't know offhand. John, do you happen to know offhand?
Looking to the west, those lots look like they're typical 6,500 square foot lots. I'd have to guess to the east that they're just marginally larger than those lots that are a little bit to the west, just looking at the graphics, but I don't know what they are off the top of my head.
So a typical R1 size, probably?
Yeah,
or
probably.
Maybe a little, okay.
A little bit larger, maybe barely. Then to the north, you have, of those lots, you also have that multifamily site that's in the county. Just to the east of the road where it says RD on that picture.
Right here.
Yep.
Oh, okay,
Yep.
got it. And that's a is that?
That's the apartments.
Apartment housing,
right
okay.
next to real life.
Okay. And then how many, one more question. If it were to be zoned R2, what's the maximum amount of units that could be on that property?
We updated that, John, is it?
Well, they can't do
12?
multifamily. They'd be stuck either doing duplexes, townhomes, or single-family homes.
Okay, so duplex, I don't think I have the right Vulcan placement
And then one
table.
thing to note in your handout, in your booklet that you guys get passed out, the implementing zones that are in that doesn't recognize R2 in your book. We've amended the comp plan. That was based off the original comp plan.
Okay.
Since then, the comp plan has been amended and does include R2 as an implementing zone. That occurred after we removed multifamily as an allowed use in the R2. So it was
Okay.
an order of operations things that occurred there with that.
Okay.
Just your current copy is on the original, not on what's currently in the comp plan.
Okay. So just off the top of your head, do you know then what could possibly, how many possible unit? I mean, what would be about the cap?
To be honest, I didn't calculate that. I
Okay.
didn't know what the minimum lot size is for a townhome and divide that by take 1.8 acres and divide by the minimum lot size. And then not only that, you'd have an internal road. So you lose about 30% of any site just for roads. So you know,
Okay.
that's another thing that factors in. So you'll end up with some internal road network that'll chew up some of that land as well. As
Okay.
well as some of the frontage improvements a little bit. Street trees and whatnot.
Okay, yeah, I can, thank you. I appreciate that. That was all I have.
Other questions for staff?
No.
Okay, Laura, thank you. We'll invite the applicant up at this time.
Then do I use this guy? Do I use
That being said, though, we would look at an application of development at the time of subdivision. If, let's just say that we're to subdivide, we'd be looking once again at the comp plan and a low-density designation of 8 dwelling units. So that would be reviewed again at the time of subdivision if it was done that way.
Okay,
So no more than 8 units.
Yeah, no more than 8 units per acre.
oh, okay. There you go. All right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Tessa Vogel. I am the project's representative for planning. We're out of Bruin Jaeger. My fellow representative, Laura Winter, is also here for any questions you might have regarding our engineering work. So, as staff had stated, we are asking for a rezone to go from the R1 zoning up to the R2 for a possible future subdivision of the property. On our property that we have, which is at 1627 North Cecil, there is an existing dwelling on site along with the garage, some little outbuildings. That is proposed to be subdivided off for its own property, and then the rest of the property will, if rezoned, go to that R1 density. It has not been determined yet if those will be townhomes, single-family dwelling, or duplex. So we aren't exactly sure how many lots we'll have based off of those. With townhomes, the minimum is 2,400 square feet. Then you have 3,000 for single family and 3,600 for the duplex. But again, as staff stated, there's going to be internal roads. There'll be some improvements that'll take up space there along the frontage. If the applicant wants to have any type of open space or essentially community space, that will also take away acreage. And so right now at the R1, you have the 12 lot density that's possible. The R2 zoning does increase that, but that will all depend on what the actual design criteria is and how many lots the applicant actually wants to create and with what type of development. So this is just the aerial brought from your zone map out there, and it's outlined in red, and you can see that kind of shaded gray area. That's the county island that you have, and then the rest in white is going to be your city property. This is just a better aerial, kind of showing what the development looks like in the vicinity. You can see that there is some development on site. We have the church to the west, we have some single family dwellings up north, and then that kind of mass housing development that's down south from them. And then the more rural kind of look to the east there, that's going to be the county island. So, like I stated, we are wanting to go from the R1 to R2 zoning. The current low-density residential land use designation does allow for this. That's also in your future land use map. The county island is shown that it will be the medium density, but this area is proposed to stay the same as it is. So we have the zone map here just showing that R1 zoning, county properties, and then you can see down here on East Salina, that is where that R2 zoning is. And something that we looked at in your comp plan and your policies and goals, one of your goals in there is to essentially wanting to annex these county islands that are popping up everywhere in your city. This would be a kind of a transition, or it would allow for a low transition to go with that East Salina zoning through the county island if it were to be R2 as well and touch up into North Cecil, and it could continue around there. It's also a good area because you also have that commercial zoning in red that it would allow easy access through. And so again, just explaining the low-density residential and medium-density residential land use areas that your future land use map shows. And this is the zoomed out. It's kind of hard to see on here, but that little orange circle down there is the property. We have it zoomed in here, where you can see where that future land use map is looking to go. And so when we look at the streets, as staff stated, that we have some major collectors, and in the staff report, you'll see that both North Cecil and 16th Street are nowhere near their capacities. They're well under it. I believe that they're around a little over 1,000 trips in there, whereas the low end of it is 4,000 for both. So we're nowhere near getting close to impacting that. And then we are looking at our public services, and this property, it will be able to have the City of Post Falls for sewer, and in the staff report you'll see that the city is willing to provide this service at that R2 density if approved and eventually subdivided. We'll also have Ross Point Water for Water District for the water service, and then Avista Utilities or the Kootenai Co-op for the power. And again, just with the municipal infrastructure, the big thing is that the city is willing to provide the service at this rezone level. So the Central Island area of the city, this is showing successful development in this area and incorporation into city limits will likely rely on incentives rewarding developers with higher density or modified design standards in exchange for forward-thinking integration of the land into its surrounding context. And so with this rezone, what this could do is to essentially bring in an incentive to those county island properties that you're kind of wanting to possibly incorporate into the city so that they're no longer there, you're not having to deal with that anymore, and what those property owners would be able to see is that, okay, well, there is this R2 zoning up here. I have an incentive to maybe want to annex so I can be at that density versus the R1 and then connect it down to that Salina Avenue. So we're just showing your city island focus area diagram here. We'll have a little zoomed in. You can see that whole area, the county island, the R1 zoning in the area, R2 zoning in the area. It's all part of that central island portion. And so, yeah, it's just a easy transition of multiple zones. You can bring up that R2 from East Salina, incorporate that county island, but then it's also really close and an easy transition to those commercial zones. That you see those a lot with a little bit higher density zones. This isn't like max density. You're not getting these crazy urban, itty bitty, tiny lots that, 1,000 square feet that you see in some places that don't really make sense in this area. But it's within walking distance of schools. It's outside of those really intense urban areas, so it's not bringing that in. This will fit in with the existing development of the area. This is just bringing up that zone map again and just looking at how it's just kind of fit into your future plans for the city. So in summary, the number and the size of the lots just hasn't been determined yet. That's going to be based off of lot design, what the developer is going to want for roads, open space, your design and landscaping criteria, all of that. This is going to kind of make a nice soft transition to the existing R2 zone. This has the necessary public services and municipal infrastructure. This would allow for development that's similar and compatible with the existing development in the vicinity. This proposal would allow for the higher density to be developed at, which is an encouragement for that city island to come in. It also has the potential to just encourage that annexation. Even if they don't want to develop at the R2, they can be larger. They don't have to go with the minimum. But it could be an incentive to annex those areas. And then this, again, would just be a subtle transition zone over to that commercial area where we're not wanting to possibly bring that in, but allow for more housing types and uses going towards that way. If you have any questions for me?
Questions for applicant?
The development will egress on Cecil, is that what I see?
Are you wanting to know about?
The exit to the neighborhood?
Yes, let me bring.
On Cecil.
Yes, so
We
it's
know-
actually, there are 2 points, one's on 16th and then one's on Cecil. The inter roads that we'll do and which one that'll be able to come off of will be determined by the road jurisdiction and by planning.
Do you have any idea in your plans how far the exit for the neighborhood is from the stop sign at Cecil and 16th?
We don't have any of the design plans put out yet, so we're not sure how close it'll be. Whatever the requirements are, we'll obviously meet those. And if there are, suggestions about better safety and corporations, then we'll also take those into consideration at that time.
We have city design standards that regulate the proximity, depending on the development type, to intersections for public safety.
Other questions?
I think I'm good right now.
Ray? No?
Done.
No? Kevin, you good?
You're
Okay, all right, excellent, thank you very much.
One additional thing to note, Field did the calculations based on the math of the lot sizes, and it looked like you could yield, without any dedications of road, about 15 lots, so assuming you didn't need any internal roads.
Right, which of
Which-
course we know they do, yes.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Okay, thank you. Public comment.
So we have one neutral and one in opposition.
Let's take them both. Okay, I want to make sure and be completely honest with you. I don't have my readers, so if I butcher your name tonight, Howard, I know your name, but if I butcher names tonight, please don't take it personal. It's just might be just a little bit cloudy. Wishing to speak neutral, Mr. Howard Burns.
Howard Burns. I live in Post Falls. I'm neutral. I do think we need R2 in the city. I was at a presentation just recently and appreciated an applicant's report that showed all the things that were happening in the report. And I watched this report, and I know the staff has lots of stuff to do. But I'm pretty sure that there's one giant church next to this property on the west side. Am I wrong? What is the giant building that says it's R1, but isn't it a church?
It is a church.
It is a church, yeah.
And I think that's really important when you're thinking about this, that there's a giant church. And it says it's R1 land. I would think that should get rezoned by some, whatever it is, to make that match what it is today. And then there was a comment that the county has allowed some kind of multifamily that seems to be maybe happening to the north, but I don't know exactly where and I don't know how many units. But when it all comes down to it, if Mr. Manley's estimate, you take 1.88 times 43,560 and then pick your lot size and you hit anywhere from 24 to 15 units. I don't know if you can condition a zone change to have a maximum number of units, but if you could, I think that would be an applicable thing to say. Hey, we agree it's R2, and I would think there would be one other item that's really important for this city, and I know lots of cities are facing it. The problem is that people don't have houses to buy. They can rent houses because BlackRock has bought houses and then turns around and rents them. And individuals buy duplexes and then turn them into rentals. And I believe you can put an HOA in process. You say, we're gonna have R2, we want an HOA, and the HOA rules must say that anybody who buys a lot here must live in it for 2 years before it can be rented. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Wishing to speak in opposition, John, is it Leonhardt? Was I close? If I went further back, I might be able to get it. Okay, thank you.
Germans in their silent letters. You made a statement that gentleman was talking about mega church being right next door.
I'll have you
Right-
state your name and
Oh,
address
excuse
if
me.
you would, please.
John Lenhart, 1574 North Gemstone Place.
Thank you, sir.
That red box you're sitting there looking at and everything else, my back fence is directly across from it. All those neighbors right there and everything else, we've talked about the drag strip known as 16th Street and Cecil. Ever since the 41, the state decided to start, closing off arterials and everything else. You got people using that place like a drag strip. You got that R1 zoning that the last gentleman was just talking about, this place called His Place Church. It's a relatively smaller church. That big block that's sitting up there and everything else, that's the mega church. Down below and everything else in that county property down there at 12th Street and Cecil is another church. So you have 3 places of worship right on top of that. On the other side of Pole Line, there's another one off Cecil. All afternoon, that's all I smell is exhaust coming over my fence. So you start putting more people in there. Those properties on the southeast corner, ma'am, you were asking about those and everything else. They're single-family dwellings. They're mobile homes, but they're single-family dwellings. You start lining up all the way down the place and everything else. Those are all single-family homes right there. There's horse properties down that run too. Right about where Lapis comes in off Cecil, there's horse properties right there. They kind of feed back around that area. So you have animals and, there's a sidewalk on the west side of Cecil, not on the east side. That's just a slope into the properties. You start shoving more houses in there, more people in there, that intersection's already a joke. You got fire crews and police crews that will come through that area and everything else needed to get to people all day long. They're gonna rezone, they're gonna put the other fire station, thankfully, they're gonna get a new firehouse up on, I believe it's Cecil Road and Pole Line, or Prairie, excuse me. Awesome, I'm glad that went through and they're gonna get what they need to do. You already got enough things in that mix. There's single-family homes sitting there, right up against that. And then there's a church, and then that huge single, R1 zoning area and everything else is Viking Estates. Now, there's a big old block wall, and a lot of those people are a little farther away from whatever it is, but you still have a drag strip between Cecil Road and Greens Ferry. People go flying down that road, wide open throttle. Doesn't matter if it's 2 wheels, 4 wheels, 6 wheels, doesn't matter, whatever it is. They go ripping up and down Cecil. Sunday mornings, Sunday afternoons, that intersection, there's people all over the place. Elementary school, high school, people blocked off from 41 trying to get through, traffic from the commercial areas, you're talking Walmart, down from Cecil and Mullen, that entire traffic, they're bypassing, they're trying to get around all the hoopla of, the cluster known as 41 right now. Which, yes, that highway gets used and it needs to be spread out and everything else. There's ways to do it. Right now, you got a dirt lot sitting there. Actually, it's got about 3-foot tall weeds on it. But you're gonna shove more houses in there? Just because they found a dirt lot and they wanna develop it? Forget when anybody else is living there. You're just gonna have to deal with it. No, we already deal with enough. And the people that live on that street, especially coming out of there, you never know what you're going to deal with leaving the launch point of 16th and Cecil. So, people who bought their homes, there's 2 houses in the corner right there. I've talked to those people directly, and they say they're scared to death somebody's going to come through that fence already, and they're going to try to put more in there. So, when you start blocking off Cecil up on pole line, and people come down 16th because that's where they can get through, and they're in a hurry, and they got to go do whatever because everybody's in a hurry right now. So, I don't know. I don't think it's the greatest thing to do. The other properties above that, you're talking about in that county little blip that you're trying to get, somebody to take over and annex because they think that it needs to be more people in there. Those are beautiful homes sitting up there. Unfortunately, that home in the corner, as well as there's actually been 4 fires at that intersection. That home right there, the only reason this is a conversation right now is that home caught fire about 1.5 years ago. House directly across the street to the east caught fire about 6 months ago, give or take, whatever it was. I think it was actually a little more than 6 months ago. One of the properties on the southeast corner, or southwest corner, the shop caught on fire. The intersection's got bad mojo. But, yeah, sure, you could put them in there, but you can't put 15 lots in there, man. There's no way you're gonna be able to do that. You wanna do 4 or 5, even trying to put single-family homes in there, you're talking tiny lots. Tiny lots. So, it's my opinion. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
Have a great one.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Is there anything else? Any others turned in? Okay. Applicant, any wish to rebuttal? For rebuttal? To rebuttal?
Not a whole lot to rebut on there. Like we stated before with the concern about the number of lots, it could, right now, with minimal roads on the property, minimal landscaping, very basic design criteria, we could get close to shoving 12 lots in there at the current zoning. Just because this is proposed to go to R2 doesn't mean that every single proposed lot's going to be itty-bitty as small as possible. Yes, that would give the applicant that option. It doesn't mean that it could be exploited to make essentially a mega urban area on this 1.88 acre lot. Most of the time, in my experience, what I see with applicants wanting for these rezones is they want to be able to put their own home on the smallest size possible, and then they essentially make the rest of those lots what fits the vicinity development. So this could still possibly be at that R1 development, but we're asking for the option to give it at the R2, and it makes sense. We're at that county island area, it's a connector. Yes, there's concerns about East 16th and North Cecil. That sounds like there's excessive speeds not based off of the speed limit. That's not something that my applicant can control. He's not the local police. Maybe there needs to be better restrictions out there, and if it's a safety concern, have these safety concerns been brought up to the local enforcement for it? That's not something that my applicant is responsible for. If he's meeting the county code and the requirements, then it makes sense. But if not, if it's things outside of that, then that's not really part of this purview on it. And that's pretty much it.
Any questions for applicant?
No.
No, I think I have one more for staff, just real quick.
We're
Okay.
still right there.
Okay, the lot that the church is on, it looks like just one big long lot that goes from 16th all the way to like Horsehaven, is that correct?
Yeah, Laura, if you could just point out, make sure we're looking at the right.
Yeah, I'm just gonna bring up the aerial so we can.
His place lot. It runs all the way.
Sorry, thought I'd go to that slide.
Yeah, that slide, it kind of gets covered there, but it looks like it is.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it appears to be, but I
Just,
can't
okay,
confirm
it
that
appears
just
to
off of this.
Okay, be one lot there, so, something would have to happen, in order for them to divide that, or.
Divide the church?
Well, that church doesn't look like, from the map, it didn't look like that church was on the whole thing, does it? I mean, it
It's
looks
not.
like there's
It's
a
grass in the
whole lot.
back
I'm
with a
just kind of
baseball field
wondering
or
what's the
something.
potential for that. If it is more lots, I'm just kind of trying to figure out what would be in there. But it looks like it's all just one lot owned by the church right now, and that would just have to be something else that came to planning and zoning if they were to, develop that land. Would that be correct?
Yeah,
Correct.
and this is kind of just a guess without knowing more information on it, but it appears that it is one lot.
Okay.
So if they were ever to develop it further or sell pieces off, they would have to come before planning and zoning for a subdivision.
Okay.
It appears to be zoned R1 for the whole thing. They may have gotten a special use permit on it. Typically, we require special use permits for churches
Okay.
in the R1 zone.
Okay.
However, I don't know the age of this church and when it was established, so it may not have gotten a special use permit if it predates that ordinance.
Okay. Okay.
But yes, likely if it were to develop differently, it would either go through a site plan review as part of the church or come before you as a public hearing.
Okay, and that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Mr. Manley, in regard to restrictions as far as placed on number of units, things of that nature, we're simply in a zoning recommendation tonight. So we're simply recommending to council that if they choose to annex it, the recommendation would be for R2 if we approved it that way. This wouldn't necessarily be the time or the place as far as any kind of restrictions. That would take place more at council.
Well, I would note that the comp plan does call out being low-density residential of the cap of 8 dwelling units per acre. So in order to subdivide, they would show that as part of their subdivision, how they're consistent with that aspect. And so, you'd be looking at that as being the kind of the regulatory element of being consistent with the comp plan.
As well as our city code.
As well as city code, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, it's also not an annexation. It's
Right.
just its own change tonight.
Right.
So that means really this isn't the place for trying to cap it. Is that what it kind of,
Yeah,
is that kind of the answer there?
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
the our code drives, our bulk and placement table with
Okay.
the lot size and stuff really
Okay.
drives that policy consideration.
Okay.
That's how
Yeah.
we apply those kind of things by
Right,
making it.
okay.
Right. No, and I realized it wasn't an annexation.
And that's
That was
one
my
reason
fault.
why, in our mixed zone, we have minimum lot sizes of 4 acres. There's a time and a place when you enter development agreements to have enough land mass to controlling different things in different aspects. So when we went through the workshops in the mixed zones, like let's just say the residential mix being a minimum of 4 acres, the mixed zone is really where we get into those development agreements and having restrictions. Which where it
Okay.
goes back to the code being more Euclidean-based R1 type zoning. Then yeah, like what Field said, it's the bulk and placement stuff that kind of regulates.
Okay, okay. That makes sense.
Perfect. Other questions for staff? Anything else? None? Okay, then we'll go ahead, close the hearing out. And we'll go to zone change number 1. Amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the comprehensive plan future land use map.
Well, the future land use map calls that area out as low-density residential, and R2 is an implementing zone in low-density residential comp plan. So it meets that criteria from that standpoint. Yeah, that's fairly straightforward, really.
Anything else to add?
No?
Let's move on to number 2. Amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the goals and policies found in the Post Falls Comprehensive Plan. Nancy?
Well, I think, I think it does. I mean, it is, it's on some I guess, major arterials, there's major arterials. It's on the right, it's got the right road classifications. Being on those roads, I think it's maybe better having a little bit higher density as a buffer, as we talk about buffering. And I really like R2 as opposed to something more dense as R3.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Anything else?
I think the staff report went through it pretty well. It was very in-depth with regards to the goals and policies, and we haven't really heard a whole lot to the contrary.
right.
Okay, let's move on to number 3. Zoning is assigned to following considerations such as items of street classification, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, geographic or natural features. Thoughts?
I kind of covered it last
You
time.
did kinda cover it.
Yeah, I think it's important to look at the existing development pattern, that there's a church to the west, which is all days of the week except Sunday, generally speaking, low intensity use, and then on Sundays it's kind of a higher intensity use. There are apartments to the east and just northeast of it. So even though that's in the county, it is a higher intensity use. And so even though R2 isn't a high intensity use necessarily, it does kind of fit right there on that corner. And I also think it's really important to remember that, when we have transportation issues and traffic issues, it's not on the main drag of the street, it's always at the intersections. And so when we have intersections, and we get a development that happens that builds out a corner of an intersection, it's really super beneficial to the transportation system as a whole. So that, that happens, and it happens at a cost, not at a cost to the taxpayer, to the city of Post Falls. It happens at the developer's cost. And I think it's important to recognize that. That's part of the Transportation Master Plan, which is a community plan. That's a benefit to the city.
Anyone else? Number 4, commercial and high-density residential zoning typically assigned along streets with higher road classifications, not applicable. Number 5, limited or neighborhood commercial and lower-density residential zoning is typically assigned for properties as proceed further away from higher-intensity urban activity. Ensure that adequate land is available for future housing needs. Anything to add there?
I think this is far enough away from the Highway 41 and rolling corridors that it is, it's close enough to be kind of in that medium zone, yet far enough away that it's not going to compete with them.
Perfect. Moving on. Industrial zoning is typically assigned for properties sufficient access to major transportation routes and may be situated away from residential zoning, not applicable. So, therefore, anything else to discuss?
No, I think it's better suited for R2 than several other things that
Could.
possibly come before us.
Okay, again, looking for a request to council for rezoning. I would entertain a motion at this time.
I will move to recommend approval of Froehlich zone change number ZC-22-5 from R1 to R2 medium density, finding that it meets the approval criteria in the Post Falls Municipal Code as outlined in our deliberations, and direct staff to prepare a reasoned decision.
Got a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Kimball,
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Hampi.
Yes.
All right, moved on to council, which brings us to our next public hearing that we'll go ahead and open, Joseph Family Trust Annexation. Mr. Manley to present.
Good evening, Commissioners. John Manley, Planning Manager here, introducing file number ANNX 227, the Joseph Family Trust Annexation, looking for the zoning recommendation. So that's what's going to be going on this evening, is just the zoning recommendation portion of the annexation request. Ultimately, council will take on this recommendation, whatever that may be, and entertain that as part of a future public hearing in regard to the annexation itself as a separate action. So the applicant is Jeremy Tizuli with Olson Engineering. The owners of this land area are Philip and Jane Joseph and Donald and Charlotte Aschenbrenner. And they're seeking a recommendation from you to for the CCS, 20 acres of their request to be CCS approximately, and another 20 acres CCM to City Council. Here's the project location. As you see this, it's the northeast corner of Greens Ferry and Prairie Avenue. You can see here you got some 5-acre lots fronting Prairie with some 10s at the rear. So current land use is the 5 to 10 acre residential uses that are in the county. Any physical characteristics of the site, there's no significant topology or vegetation matters. It is to be known it is over the aquifer. A Ross Point Water District would be the water provider, while sanitary sewer services be provided by the City of Post Falls. So we're going to go through the 6 zone change review criteria as it relates to their request. First is there a proposed amendment of zoning is in accordance with the comprehensive plan's future land use map. So I'll go over the first criteria here. It's designated transitional, as you see here. You also see that red circle it denotes that it entertains that as being a potential suitable location for a commercial node. The purpose of those nodes was to be more neighborhood in nature, so individuals that are along Prairie Avenue, that they don't necessarily, they're not all driving to 41 or Southeast Way or Mullen Avenue for their services. Reason being is that kind of reduces their impact along those corridors and there's the traffic loading. Additionally, by having neighborhood commercial in a closer proximity to residences, it does allow opportunities for those within the city and those in the periphery to potentially walk or do other activities and operate more as like a civic third place type functionality for those neighborhoods. Looking at the transitional purpose, it was acknowledged that the timing and growth for these areas in transitional is unknown, but it pointed to the focus area. And what does this focus area denote for providing some sense of guidance? This location is at the very western edge of the 41 North section that you see here just north of Prairie. And it states that it focused provisions for multifamily, commercial, and tech uses near higher classified roadways. Development should provide pedestrian connectivity to all multi-use paths and trails, including the Prairie Trail. So in this case, at the time of some development, you would end up getting the improvements along the north side of Prairie and the east side of Greens Ferry, and that includes generally either a multi-use path and or a sidewalk, providing connectivity north, south, east, west. Looking at the second criteria, looking at amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the goals and policies found in the comp plan. So I'll go through this with pertaining to goals and policies. Grow and sustain a balanced, resilient economy for Post Falls, providing community prosperity and fiscal health. Maintain and improve Post Falls small town scale, charm, and aesthetic beauty. Maintain and improve Post Falls transportation network on pace and in concert with needed plan objectives. I think I actually have a slide on that that's not in the right place. Let's see if I can find it. So pertaining to goal 6, currently just to the southwest, this is a Greens Ferry. It's a minor arterial, and then you have the principal arterial, be it Prairie Avenue, and just about a half mile east you got Highway 41. So looking at kind of what is existing for what's been approved. Currently, this is a rural egg lot. The owner of that recently annexed in with commercial, with the intent to do some egg commercial. Not saying that's what it will be. It's zoned commercial, so it's eligible from higher intense uses if for some reason down the road that occurred. To the southeast, you have a recent annexation with limited commercial. These are general boxes, but I just kind of overlaid just to give an idea of what's going on. So the limited commercial there, so it's going to be some neighborhood commercial and or a church at that location. And then you have some R2 just to the east with some other R2s. Most of those R2s went single family. And at the time of the application, that was their intent, is to put single family at that location, but in the R2 zone. Looking to the east, you have in this red hatch, that's technology mixed. That allows for a mix of commercial, multifamily, and industrial. So where you see the MF, the red, and this hatch, that's actually all part of the tech park. And the reason why I highlighted it in this fashion was, as part of the development agreement with this, they excluded multifamily, standalone multifamily, east of what would be a future extension of Cecil. They put a cap on percentages on the site, which mathematically led an area generally bound by what you see in orange here, but is part of that tech park, as more than likely to be developed as multifamily at some time in the future. What is currently where you see the gray is a planned extension of Cecil Road that the documents are in, and soon, or than later, there's going to be a construction improvement agreement that'll go before council for the proposal of the extension of Cecil Road. So the reason for this kind of elaborate response on that goal 6 is to look at some of these improvements are going to be going in along the north side with as far as sidewalks, trails, and or the north half of Prairie Avenue. Looking at Prairie Avenue, you have potential points of intersections of where you have, I can't see that road name, Lynn Street will interconnect Cecil Road, Charville, and you have Bogey. These blue points denote intersection points. The green denotes a multi-use trail that more than likely would be improved sooner than later. Some of these lots we don't have any development plans in, but they're in the city, and that could be foreseen. Similarly with the north, you see some green section. Where you see in red, those are trail sections that without development more than likely would remain unimproved. So you wouldn't get those improvements connecting that corridor nor the widening of those road sections. Once again, the compound goal here was looking at infrastructure and the timing of improvements for goal 6. Looking at mobility, so here where you have roads with a higher speed, generally speaking, you have higher end uses along those because they don't necessitate as many points of conflict with road infrastructure versus as you have lower speeds, you have more points of conflict, lower speeds, which is more suitable for your more lesser intense road sections. So once again, that was goal 6, maintain and improve post-falls transportation network on pace and in concert with the need and the plan objectives. Any questions? That was kind of a long-winded.
No, you may have said this and my brain was somewhere else. What's the denied RM?
Oh, thank you. That one there was someone came forward within, I don't know the date exactly off the top of my head. I just wanted to make it clear that in the last 2 years, I believe it was Copper Basin came forward for an annexation for RM, and that was denied. And so what I was trying to denote there, that until that gets annexed and until that gets developed with whatever zone is there, you would not get the improvements along the north side of Prairie, and nor would you get the complementary pedestrian trail connection at that location.
Okay, because that's still then that's still county, it's not actually
At this
annexed.
point in time, yes. And so what you get with this potentially, if whatever zone was designated, and at time this ever comes annexed in, that would encourage that area to move forward with another land use application. And so for all intents and purposes, between Greens Ferry and Highway 41, you'd have a majority of the road widening project for that, with 5 lanes and with the corresponding pedestrian connectivity along the north and south.
So that is what we're waiting for to actually widen that road, is the development on the north side.
At this point in
of
time,
Prairie.
yes. Typically, that's, you have a road classification, and it may be a 2-lane road circa 2010, but looking at where it's at in our grid system and its road classification and how it's gonna function long-term, then a development comes forward for an annexation, and when they widen the road, then that's how it meets the long-term growth. Counter to that, growth still occurs regionally, not just in Post Falls. You still end up with people encumbering the system, and so when you have a county road that's unimproved with 2 lanes, it also creates an encumbrance for a period of time until that gets widened. It does create an opportunity for safety hazards when they don't get improved in concert with regional growth.
Right, because then it would still just be developed, or it would still just be improved in those sections. Like widened Prairie? Because you're talking 5 lanes eventually. right?
Eventually, yeah.
Okay.
It'll be 5 lanes more likely, eventually, from Pleasant View to 41 in
But, okay,
time.
the land would just be given for that improvement when it could all get done, right?
When they develop, they dedicate right-of-way.
Okay,
They
yes.
dedicate right-of-way, and they do the improvements,
And they do the improvements at the
as
same
well
time.
as pay impact fees at the time of development towards any sort of regional infrastructural elements too.
Okay, but wouldn't it be kind of hit and miss then?
That's generally how it's occurred. That's why we have county pockets in Post Falls. That's,
Okay. Okay,
Other states do it differently, but
Okay.
in Idaho, growth does their development in pace with their development.
okay.
So Goal 7, plan for and establish types of quantity of land uses in Post Falls, supporting community needs and city's long-term sustainability. Protect and maintains natural resourcing, including clean air, soils, river, and aquifer. Minimizing light and noise pollution. Goal 12, maintain City of Post Falls long-term fiscal health. Look at Policy 1, support land use patterns that maintain or enhance the community levels of service. Foster the long-term fiscal health of the community. Maintain and enhance the residential quality of life. Promote compatible, well-designed development, and implement the goals and policies in the comprehensive plan. I think I've kind of touched on a lot of that with what's already been stated. Apply and revise zoning designations with careful considerations of the factors, including the future land use mapping. Went over that. Compatibility with the surrounding land uses. So I've kind of showed you what is planned for in the city, and you obviously know what's to the west and to the north, those larger county pockets at this point in time. Infrastructure and service plans, we kind of went over Greens Ferry and Prairie. Looked in the staff report. Well, there is the ability to provide sanitary services to that area. Kind of went over the traffic patterns. Stand with the next one. Look at Policy 3, encourage development patterns that provide suitably scaled daily needs services within walking distance of residential areas, allowing a measure of independence for those who cannot drive. Kind of went over the nodes, that kind of serves a little bit of that. Encourage the development of off-corridor access and circulation of commercial and mixed-use areas, abutting limited access arterials. Criteria 3. So that's kind of wraps up the goals and policy section for criteria 2. On criteria 3, some of this is going to be redundant, and when it is, I'm going to kind of just make it simple and move on. But zoning is assigned following considerations of such items as street classifications, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, and geographic or natural features. Once again, here's the surrounding zoning. Here's the actual, when you look at the tech mixed zone. That's the zone, and I believe it goes up to Hayden Avenue. There's the site in question. I mentioned this, the ordinance recordation is not currently incorporated in our polygons. That's why you see the white, and that's why you don't see that limited commercial and R2 that I mentioned. But you can see the surrounding zones that are in the city, the white areas to the west and north, and just to the east, they're all currently in the county. Kind of already went over this one with the surrounding zoning and how it relates to that principal arterial. Went over this, that aspect, we've gone over that. Here is some developing commercial areas of higher intensity. So you have here the more development going along here along Celtice Mullen. You see some activity on the northern extents of 41, some activity out at the point, and you do have some commercial type stuff occurring along Prairie Avenue there. And you see that blue star, that's the proposed project. What I highlighted here in that blue elliptical between Meyer and Greens Ferry, that's probably that busy section where attaining those road improvements in the near future are probably more important than other areas of Prairie Avenue at this time. Just as a heads up and how it relates to Prairie Avenue, there is this Pleasant View Road interchange that's planned and scheduled to be done over on 53. I don't know if anybody has gone west towards Beck Road or Pleasant View and tried taking a left. I used to do it more frequently than I do now. Had a couple close calls, so don't go that way. But once this gets done, that'll open that up. My kids, they go to East Valley, so I'm driving over to Washington quite a ways. So once this is done, I'll go that way. I would be willing to wager that there's a number of residents that have chose not to go this way for the same similar reasons. Once this done, I would predict that Prairie Avenue is probably going to get used more than it is now. I don't know what the number loaded would be, but I would think there's similar people in similar situations, be it a job in the north part of Spokane or something similar. Zone change criteria 4. Commercial and high density residential zoning is typically assigned along streets with a higher road classification. Kind of denoted, both Prairie Avenue and Greens Ferry Road are arterials, with Prairie being a principal and Greens Ferry being a minor. Limited neighborhood commercial and lower density is typically assigned as properties as they proceed farther away from higher intensity urban activity. So this is in a location with once in the outskirts, but it will evolve into a major east-west corridor, as mentioned. They're not asking for industrial, so that's not applicable. I do want to go over one thing before I close up that I have not. So here you have that CCS zone that does have some infrastructure limitations. There's some sewer grade issues with that. So I know the applicant intends to put a use that does not demand much sewer. So they specifically asked the city. And so from what I hear, they'd like to do a storage use there. There's not much sewer needed, so they would be able to utilize that as a usage to the south. The CCM and you see here the CCM and the CCM MF, those are options because in the CCM you're allowed up to 50% up to 50% of the land for multifamily in a development agreement. The draft development agreement that was in your packet, I believe, has it somewhat shy of 17% for multifamily. That would be impossible at this point in time to go north of that line, as sewer grades would impede that. You'd have to do some major infrastructure costs out to the west that would involve going down either right-of-ways to the west through other properties, and would be encumbering at any time in the near future for just feasibility and cost. And so looking at their plans, that's how the staff report was conditioned and with that development agreement. Here's the agencies that were routed and notified. Comments, we heard from the police. They remain neutral on a couple of responses. CUNY County Fire, they said they would comment as part of the review permitting process. DEQ had no environmental comments. The school district remained neutral, and the highway district supported the annexation. Any questions for me?
Questions for staff?
Did you just say that because of the sewer limitations, it was unlikely that together as a whole, meaning the 40 acres, could not likely go any higher than 17% at the high-density multifamily? Is that?
The 17% was established by basically looking at what you've just referred to as
Okay.
not being able to the north. If for some reason the CCS, they wanted to do that, it would take a special use permit, but they're not going down that. What they're doing is they're going down into a development agreement, which is more binding
Okay.
so this whole property, the whole 41 acres, will be embedded into a development agreement with that 17% in an area, and we attach that as an exhibit in the development agreement in an area that's conceptually very similar to as proposed here.
So 17% of the CCS?
Of the 40 acres as a whole.
Oh, the 40, okay.
So it's
Got it.
17% of their entire annexation area
Okay.
as described per their legal.
Okay, so 7 or 8 acres or something like that? I don't know, well, 7 acres, maybe, I don't know. What is 17%?
You can ask the applicant, I'm sure he
Okay.
knows.
I think he already said it, but he'll say it again. Any other questions for staff?
I just want some quick clarification on the development agreement. I know that's for CCM typically, but it's not typically for CCS. Is this a special case where that would occur?
So technically speaking, and I've communicated this to individuals, and is to avoid custom zoning where we have a development agreement with every R1, R2, R3. We avoid at most cases to put special conditions. The way we've adopted our ordinance and what's per state code, we technically could. It just makes an administrative nightmare if every piece of property had its own special zoning district, and it would be very costly and time consuming for staff. So staff is going to discourage for any sort of straight up zoning, any sort of development agreement. When we see a mixed zone, staff knows, similar to a PUD, we see a PUD, we know we need to go look up the agreement. We see a mixed zone, we know we better look up the agreement, and that where we can go in and find out any sort of special conditions on that proposal. This, being adjacent to this site, seems amenable to impose a development agreement and include the CCS as part of its entire development agreement.
Okay.
Anything else for John?
No.
Nope. Thank you, sir. Invite the applicant up. Man, we're supposed to get this ahead of time. I'm sorry. Okay. Next one.
You.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jeremy Terzulli. I am a project coordinator with Olson Engineering based out of Post Falls, Idaho. I'm here to talk about the Joseph Family Trust and their request for a recommendation for zoning and ultimately a request for annexation into the city. As John mentioned, and city staff always does a great job of teeing things up, so I'll move through some of the items in my presentation that are redundant and John possibly even did a better job of describing. So these are the criteria, as mentioned, for a zoning classification and a zoning recommendation. I'm going to not really discuss E and F very much, as we're not really looking for limited commercial at this point in time or industrial. So I'm going to focus on the first four and some of the clarifications or interpretations. Pretty much everything that I grab in my presentations comes right out of the Post Falls Comprehensive Plan, and it's simply my interpretation and our development team's interpretation of that plan, how it affects the city, and then we'll proceed from there. As John mentioned, just adjacent to city limits at Greens Ferry and Prairie, located on the northeast corner, and is assigned the transitional designation. So we'll look to the focus areas to gain some guidance on how it should be zoned and how it should develop. As John mentioned, it's technically within the 41 North, but it is right on the boundary of the Central Prairie focus area. So these are snips right out of the comprehensive plan. I've highlighted some areas, bullet points that I believe show some overlap, and the comprehensive plan showing consistency that major arterials, these principal arterials, and minor arterials are areas that are suited for higher density residential as well as commercial uses, and you see that overlap in both focus areas. And then also just to really auger down on the idea that this commercial node is right out of the comprehensive plan map, and the crafters of the comprehensive plan and the ultimate adoption of it recognize the benefit of these commercial nodes at these strategic locations on principal arterials. And I'll go into that a little greater depth here as I move through. So as you can see, it is consistent with the future land use map, the request for CCM and CCS. Comprehensive plan goals and policies. We'll start with some of the goals that I thought applied to this request. The first about growing a sustained, balanced, resilient economy for Post Falls, providing for community prosperity, fiscal health, as well as plan for and established types and quantities of land uses in Post Falls, supporting community needs and the city's long-term sustainability. These two items, some of the recommendations in the comprehensive plan and ways to do that would be to create a balance in your land use and zoning designations, as well as provide opportunities for local businesses to flourish. And we believe that this request would provide an opportunity for these neighborhood commercial services to provide a home for local businesses and people that have hitched their wagon to the city of Post Falls as far as their business is concerned. Keeping Post Falls neighborhoods safe, vital, and attractive. We believe that the storage component that we are proposing on the northern portion of this property is, there's certainly still, as much as we see a lot of storage around here, I've researched the data, I've talked to storage facility owners in the area, we are not at saturation, and part of the reason for that is as these developments go up and as housing developments go up, the covenants within those developments are far more restrictive as we move forward. So you're not allowed to leave all of your toys, your campers, your boats, your side-by-sides, and everything else within the neighborhood. You're not allowed to wedge your 28-foot bumper pull camper between your garage and the neighbor's garage. So these people are using these storage facilities for those types of things. So we find that supports the idea of keeping the neighborhood safe, vital, and attractive. Maintain and improve Post Falls transportation network. John did a great job. I don't have a whole lot to add to that, except that the Highway District and the City of Post Falls developed a transportation master plan. The comp plan is quite clear. Follow the master transportation plan, and that's the best way to do that. And this is consistent with that transportation plan. It gives the city an opportunity to acquire much needed right-of-way to build out that principal arterial of Prairie. And again, as John mentioned, giving residents options with regard to moving east and west. One thing I will note is that Greens Ferry, as of right now, other than 41, is the only north-south corridor that is not impeded by the Burlington Northern train line. So I don't know about you, but I use that to my advantage at times, and I know I get to go under the tracks and I don't have to be stuck by a train, so that does happen. Protect and maintain Post Falls natural resources, clean air, river, aquifer, minimizing light and noise pollution citywide. Panhandle Health District does offer some guidance on that, and one of the best ways that they indicate that that can happen is by eliminating some of these residential septic systems that are beginning to get outdated, not always maintained to the level that we would like to see, as well as redevelopment then holds a developer to the most stringent standards with regard to stormwater remediation, storage, and injection back into the aquifer. Panhandle Health actually issued a report within the last couple of years that said that the health of the aquifer is actually improving as these septics come offline and developers are held to this stormwater remediation. Maintain and improve Post Falls small town scale, charm, and aesthetic beauty. The authors and the designer of the comprehensive plan saw these commercial nodes as a critical element to maintaining that small town feel. So part of what this does, these commercial nodes out on the periphery of town, thank you, out here on the periphery of town will minimize the need for people to come back into town, clogging up the roadways, and allow them alternative routes home, right? So if you're working over at Riverbend and you live perhaps up in this neighborhood, Green Meadows, up and around there, if you've got to stop off and pick up a pizza for dinner, a gallon of milk, and a few other amenities, you're gonna jump on the freeway, you're gonna get off at Spokane Street or 41, and then move your way north from there. With neighborhood commercial services at these periphery neighborhood node locations, it allows people the option to perhaps, as John pointed out, jump on Pleasant View, go to the new roundabout at Prairie, head east, and know you're going to be able to pick up those items on your way home, giving people options, and again, allowing people that live in those neighborhoods that maybe are stay-at-home parents, retirees, people that work from home. They don't have to hop in their car, head down to the city center to get the things that they need to get. They can do that within their neighborhood. We're talking things like vet clinics, dental places, physical therapy, convenience stores, coffee shops, smoothie bars, those types of neighborhood things that people can satisfy their needs for shopping and services without having to go down to Spokane Street, Celtice, or jump on 41. So in addition, if we funnel all these commercial uses to Spokane Street, the 41 Celtice interchange, Mullen, at some point, as the population grows, and it is going to continue to grow, if we simply say that's where commercial services belong, we're going to have to go vertical at some point, right? We're going to run out of available dirt. And the more services we push into these commercial places that say commercial goes there, commercial goes there, as we go vertical, we need more parking. So you start mowing down the smaller, older places that maybe got, a new tenant in there. You go a little higher, so we start to get taller buildings and more asphalt to provide for parking for those services. So these strategically placed commercial nodes, in my humble opinion, do help promote the idea of that small town scale and charm. And I truly believe that. Some of the policies, John went over these at length, so I'm going to move through these pretty quickly. Again, high traffic areas for commercial centers, encouraging pedestrian uses when possible. These commercial services, proximity to parks that aren't that far away, and the additional rooftops that are going in here all tend to blend together. Working with the tech park, hopefully that thing breaks loose sometime in the near future. And people that are working in that tech park can come over at lunchtime and get a bite to eat or grab a cup of coffee in this neighborhood commercial node. Is it appropriate when considering the street classification, the traffic patterns, existing development? I believe wholeheartedly yes. It's consistent. Adjacent to the principal arterials, it's a signalized intersection. Post Falls Highway District is in support, saying it's consistent with their master transportation plan. So yes, we believe it's absolutely in alignment. John, I think, did a better job of talking about the right-of-way acquisition. This area in green shows you what's in city, and eligible for that right-of-way acquisition and ultimately build out of this road section of Prairie. Our little portion is those 4 or 5 acre chunks right there, leaving that Copper Basin piece as the final component to get that whole 1 mile section of Prairie Avenue acquired and ultimately built out. There is your breakdown of what's been proposed, and that was driven by dimensions of what we feel the commercial frontage along Prairie will need with regard to depth for multi-tenant commercial buildings in there, a mix of retail, office uses, perhaps convenience store. The red showing will ultimately be some form of storage. We're not talking just general basic 7-foot tall door self-storage, commercial storage, perhaps contractor yard storage, those types of things up there. The yellow, we were in essence asked to put a maximum of what might be a residential component on there. By no means are we proposing a residential component at this time. We were asked to understand that it could be requested in the future and to perhaps offer a bubble map to show how it might develop out if we do move to a residential component there. This is a very preliminary rendering of where we're headed and what we think could possibly work here. These are some renderings. The one at the top of the screen, the intersection of Prairie and Greens Ferry looking northeast. The one at the bottom looking back west as though you were standing in the middle of Prairie Avenue, which I wouldn't suggest. So in summary, one of the best ways that the city can achieve their goals with regard to fiscal health, using all the tools available to put in infrastructure, the number one is have the developer do it. When properties redevelop, they enter these zoning development agreements, dedicate the right-of-way. The developer gets to put in the sewer line underneath the road, gets to build out the road section, gets to put in any stubs that are going to be necessary along the way, drop water line in, build the sidewalks, the multi-use path, the stormwater swales, the street trees, as well as paying impact fees and future taxes to the city. We believe that development is a key component to the long-term fiscal health of the city. And I'm going to close by saying I know there are some letters that have been received in opposition of this proposal. I would say for every letter received, after simply one newspaper article and a public hearing posting, I've been approached by members of the commercial brokers community and just residents in the area asking, when is this project going to come out of the ground, because we think this is a great location for our business or for a client of mine. I can say without a doubt I've been approached by a local dentist, a local machine shop that runs a small little boutique machine shop making specialty parts, and a number of other individuals that are in full support of this project and are wondering when it's going to be done. With that, I can answer any questions you might have.
Questions?
Looks like you're showing that driveway right off of Prairie.
It's so preliminary. We just wanted a few pretty
Drawings,
pictures to
okay.
kind of show it. Those are going to be controlled approaches, right? Because we're so close on this principal
Right.
arterial. Those will likely be right in, right out only.
Oh, gotcha.
We want to actually pull that back off of Prairie a bit and put double stack some parking up front. And then this one shows it a little better. We want to pull those more to the north, have a backage road that's going to connect, hopefully, ultimately to the Copper Basin development to the east, and then ultimately punch down onto Prairie Avenue back over by Lynn Street, I think it is, to kind of work with that whole network. So right in, right out, as you're moving west along Prairie. Same on the hard corner, and then when we get far enough away from the intersection on Greens Ferry to have a full backage road, a full in, full out. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Other questions?
Nope.
No? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everyone.
Public comment. I'll take them all. All right. In opposition, wishing to speak, Mr. Bob Flowers.
Bob Flowers, good evening, commissioners. And I don't know what the correct term is for that.
We're with you.
Yeah, all right. Anyway, I know that we're just dealing with the zoning tonight. I realize that. I also realize that the city's not going to annex in this piece of property until 41's done. I believe Mr. Kimball was made aware of that last week very clearly. I have a problem with both these zoning designations. One could allow 100% high-density residential. The other one could only allow 50%. Now, say they get these and they got all these pretty drawings that we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and they get their zoning and they get annexed into the city. Well, suddenly that property has become very valuable. And who's to say that this developer won't just sell it off to another one? And all these guarantees of these nice little businesses and storage units or whatever, you know, never do appear because there's a new owner. I really, right now, would hope that the city just, well, planning and zoning right now should turn this request down. It's at the wrong time and the wrong place. Until the 41 corridor is completed and we know what kind of, I'm going to say it, mess that we do have once it is done, and some of these other projects are built out, I don't believe that we should even be looking at annexing in or zoning any more property at this point up in that area. There's too much mess going on Prairie right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flowers. Also in opposition, wishing to speak, Mr. Howard Burns.
Good evening, Howard Burns, Post Falls. John, could I get the surrounding zoning map that you had?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Want this one or this one?
That one.
There we go.
I like colors.
Nice.
Thanks.
If I had more space, I would add more colors.
There you go. I'm going to try to touch on four main things. The first I've spoken about before, and it wasn't discussed here, and it's somewhat of an afterthought, but we talk about trails, we talk about walking, we talk about pedestrians and how there's the small town atmosphere, and if we put roundabouts anywhere along Prairie from this point to the east, I think it's a nightmare. I think people trying to walk across roundabouts as pedestrians to go to trails and emergency vehicles, they can't push the little button and change all the lights to green. And I drive down Saltese on a regular basis where there's 4 lanes coming into roundabouts, and all it takes is one person who's afraid to enter that thing and everything backs up. I just don't think there should be any roundabouts on Prairie. It's too big a street to have roundabouts. Secondly, so here we're looking at the zoning map, which I appreciate. I just want to point out a couple of things. First, the Douglas property, the 10 acres on Highway 41 has already come in here and asked to be CCS, I believe. So that's an application that's pending. We know that the property on the other side at Highway 41 is a 50-acre shopping center where Peak Fitness is trying to go in. We know that 98 acres was just potentially annexed in from Jacqueline on the other side of that with a school site that sounds very wonderful, but there's 73 acres that's CCS along with it. We know that all the CCM down here at the bottom has yet to be developed, and it's already CCM. I allow 105-foot high buildings there. We know that the RM zone over here, when he came in for the hearing, Greenstone, you voted in the RM zone, and it included commercial off of Syringa. I believe that's the name of the street. So there's commercial in his design off of Prairie that's shown here under the RM zone. And then we know that the 2 at Greens Ferry that were already discussed are commercial, plus everything down Highway 41. There's lots of commercial. There's plenty of places for somebody who wants to put a dental shop in or someplace else to go. Polston's not built out yet. The storage section that is designed, if that's what they want, where the CCS is, then LC covers it. LC allows storage. Don't make it CCS. Go with LC. The CCM zone, if that's what you need along Prairie and Greens Ferry, then make sure it gets conditioned so it can't be 105-foot high multi-use buildings, which is allowed in the CCM zone. And Copper Basin, I don't know if you recall that project that came in was denied. It was a whole cookie cutter bunch of little rectangular lots. It just looked like a deck of cards that had been strewn carefully over the landscape. And Copper Basin owns the great URD now up at Pleasant View. And that's the other thing that wasn't discussed. The city has a URD here where we've given tax advantage benefits to the city for everything they put into the URD. Why should we approve something else coming into the city when we haven't benefited from our own URD? Let's focus on the URD that's in the city. Let's get our businesses there. That's in our interest. That's what we need. The city's already committed to stuff there. So we need to make that happen. Last but not least, Northland Nursery is not in the city, but it's my belief that the city struck some kind of deal with them to get the Prairie Avenue improvements done. Even though they aren't in the city, even though they didn't annex, we cut some kind of deal that allowed Prairie to be built there. So I don't know what that
25
was,
seconds, sir.
but I would think somebody should be talking about how that happens. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Also in opposition wishing to speak is at Kay Bulk.
Hello. My name is Kay Balk. I live at 9670 West Gallup Lane, and I am in opposition of this annexation. Number one reason that I'm in opposition of this, excuse me, council people. Sorry, this is my first one. Number one reason is annexation, is the infrastructure. I've lived out on my property since 1998. I'm going to lose my view. I'm going to lose my quietness of country living. But Prairie and Greens Ferry are 2-lane roads, as you know. Using Greens Ferry as a main north-south arterial road is cumbersome, as Green Ferry was not built to handle the additional traffic with only 2 lanes. Some of these new housing developments south of us Green Ferry only have 1 exit. Prairie is building a gym on the south side of the road, a church going to be built on the corner of Greens Ferry and Prairie, along with single-family homes and duplexes. Now they want to build on the north side of Prairie. Where does all the traffic go? According to the proposed page 2.2.5, no roadway intersections from the property to Prairie will be allowed. Right in, right out. Full access driveway approaches will not be allowed. Again, my question to you, where's all this traffic going to go? Building storage units has other concerns. Lights shining all night long, traffic in and out all hours of the night, our view being blocked by what we've had for over 24 years of the mountains. This is an urban community where we're living, not a rural community. Apartments, traffic, people coming and going at all hours. There's not even a road there for this to come. Only being able to access apartments coming from the east. Crime goes up in high-density areas, more population, crime increases. What about fire hazards with people only limited to right turning lanes? How many people will be able to exit safely? Ambulances for medical care, how are they to provide emergency service with one entrance and the road being backed up? We understand that growth needs to happen. However, with growth comes consideration of the people that lived in our neighborhood like us for over 24 years. The consideration be limited times where people can access their storage units if this goes through. A fence around the storage units, dimmer lights, most importantly, storage units to be only 1 story tall so that we do not lose our view. More than adequate parking for the apartments, as people always park on the roads. And if you go down where they've just built the new roads on Spokane, going towards the west, people are parked everywhere on the roads. The system of the public works of a country, state, or religion, the infrastructure, resources, personal buildings, or equipment equipped for activity. The underlying foundation of basic framework, including roads, dams, waters, and sewer systems. Basically, Greens Ferry and Prairie are all overwhelmed with traffic now. We feel that if the city approves this, that the road work would be completed before the construction begins using the east side of Prairie for the roads widening. My question to the city, when is the last time you were on Prairie, going east, waiting for 4 lights to get you across 41? I challenge you to try and get out on Prairie sometime, getting out on Charliesville, because they can only go out one way. My only concern about what they just said about this is that they want to leave Post Falls and the community as safe, attractive, vital, small town feeling.
30 seconds, go ahead.
I want you to leave my neighborhood alone. We've been there 24 years. And I don't think we moved out of the town to be in the country, and we're at risk. Thank you.
Thank you. Also in opposition, wishing to speak, Ted, is it Macaulay? Macaulay? I took a stab at it.
Good evening, Ted McCauley, 3516 North Mila Lane. As other folks have mentioned, we have quite a bit of commercial properties that have already been approved. 3 of them that come to mind right away is there's one on the northeast side of Greens Ferry, of Prairie and 41. There's one on the southeast corner of Prairie and 41. There's also a large one at Horsehaven also. Has also been mentioned, Greens Ferry and Prairie are both just 2-lane rural roads. The applicant spoke about that the traffic will be on Prairie, and that the reason why they want to put this in is because to help the residents so that they don't have to travel long distances to go to the dentist or whatever. But yet most of the folks in this area are actually on Greens Ferry south of Prairie. They're not north, they're not on Prairie. To the west of Prairie, or to the west of Greens Ferry, is not a heavily populated area. It's much more heavily populated south of Prairie on Greens Ferry. Also, it should be also noted that Greens Ferry is crossed by the Union Pacific Railroad, just north of what they're proposing here. It's grade. It is a railroad crossing that is at grade, and I can testify that I hear the trains often going right through that crossing. So there is definitely a railroad crossing very close by. One of the things that I was curious about is when they talk about that they have spoken with the Post Falls School District, Fire and Rescue. I don't see anything where they ever say that they've contacted any residents. Is there any criteria in there that the residents of a project are informed of a zoning change that's being proposed in their area. If not, I would surely love staff to maybe look into that, because that's pretty important. If you happen to have a zoning, if you lived on the, if you lived in the, just south of that property and you didn't know about it, maybe you don't get a newspaper, maybe you're not up on those types of things.
I paused the time, so
Oh.
we can respond without.
Okay, go ahead.
taking- I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, so again, we, to address the noticing issues, we follow the state code for noticing. The property is posted, the notice is published in the paper, and I believe.
Do you send any letters out to the residents?
Owners get letters.
We do it within 300 feet. They
Within
get a public
300
notice within
feet.
300 feet. That's following state code. So
Okay.
we do that, like you said, post on the website, post on site.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. And then I was there's two elementary schools that are located along Greens Ferry, both Greens Ferry Elementary and Post Falls Elementary. If you were to put this commercial property up there, there's surely going to be a lot more traffic trying to go by those schools. And it's tough right now, certain times of the day, to get up and down Greens Ferry because of the schools being let in and out. I'd love to see the city do much more infill rather than just hopscotching around and adding pieces of property in. If you were to drive up Greens Ferry from Highway 90, you will come by county, city, county, city, city, county, county, city, city. Those areas all need to be infilled before we start expanding any further north and east and west from what we currently have. Ooh, running out of time here. You know, the applicant talks about Prairie being a 5-lane from Pleasant View to Highway 41. What about the folks that already have property that's on Prairie, both north or south, and they're going to expand that road up? We have plenty of capacity on Highway 41 for any commercial properties that need to be developed. We still haven't even developed those properties. So I don't think we need to rezone any property right now and subsequently annex the properties in. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, appreciate it. Applicant rebuttal.
Jeremy Terzulli again with Olson Engineering. To address the impact of storage, actually the data states that the storage of all commercial uses is one of the least impactful when it comes to traffic. I guess the logic there is people stick their crap in the storage unit, and a lot of them only come back on the weekends to grab the camper or whatever the case may be, or seasonally. But I've actually done the research on that, and as far as commercial users and generating of traffic, least trips per day, right at the top of the list is self-storage. We do point out that there will likely be some commercial and contractor storage. That's going to be isolated to times we would think when contractors are going to and from job sites. So as far as light pollution these days, cities and all the municipalities where I've developed out self-storage are very clear about downlighting, wall packs on the sides of buildings, and storage units don't build up, they build out. It's just not cost effective to go vertical with self-storage and have to have elevators and all that type of stuff. So that's that. With regard to some of the other comments brought up in opposition, all I have is the comprehensive plan and the master transportation plan. I have the criteria that we bring up at every one of these hearings. I guess I can't really argue against some of those points because my criteria in presenting this and advocating for my client who lives here. Yes, he's been very successful in businesses in other communities, and he has offices across the country, but this is where he lives. This is where Mrs. Joseph grew up, over in Spokane Valley. He's moving to retirement age. He wants to move all of his assets. He wants this to be a generational project that he can be proud of. This is not a get it entitled and sell it off to the highest bidder. This is not hide the ball and jam a bunch of apartment complexes in here. We've been completely transparent. We've had multiple meetings with city staff. I have a transportation plan and a comprehensive plan that I have to use to try to advocate for this project. And the comprehensive plan is so crystal clear on this one. A commercial node at this minor arterial and this principal arterial to help mitigate traffic citywide, to help provide commercial and much needed services to rooftops around here. The property owners on both southern corners of this intersection have already sort of indicated what they're gonna do. We know one's gonna be a church in that church parking lot. And we believe that the lady on the southwest corner, she wants to do some kind of unique urban farm craft type of thing, not your true commercial services. To John's point, she may sell it and somebody else now has entitlements to build out that commercial node. But as of right now, the picture and the requests that are out there indicate that 2 of the 4 corners here for the commercial node that is clearly outlined in the comprehensive plan, those opportunities are gone on those 2 corners. So are we going to trust the people that wrote and adopted the comprehensive plan with the community input that this is a key component to the growth of this city? Or are we going to force applicants like myself to argue against things that we're not proposing or hold us to a different standard? I feel kind of at a loss. I have those standards of approval. I feel that this proposal checks every box and meets them without a shadow of a doubt. So that's what I have. Thank you very much.
Any questions for applicant? Okay.
Before you close it, I would like to
Yep.
bring up some options. And some of the stuff you saw, one of the, in the public testimony, looked at the storage units as being 1-story limitations. This is a CCM, it's a development agreement. So there's things you can add to that development agreement through your discussion. You may want to consider that for the storage unit area. Howard Burns mentioned the 105 feet CCM. He's not incorrect. You could, in the development agreement, cap that at a height lesser than 105 feet. So those are options. The other thing is there was a reference to a portion going 100% multifamily. Once again, this is going to be encumbered by a development agreement. The current proposal has a cap of 17%, which is recorded against a property and title. So no matter who owns it or if there's a transaction down the road, will inherit the framework of this development agreement.
And again, everything you covered is covered or can be covered in the development agreement.
Or anything else that you guys may discuss
Right.
going forward. I just wanted to touch on the 2 items in the public testimony that you could control and have measures on, as well as the development agreement and its impact on the proposed zoning.
Okay. Commissioners, any further questions? Okay. None? Then we'll go ahead and close public hearing and open. Amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the comprehensive plan and the future land use map. Look, this was covered pretty heavily, but
Yeah.
any comment?
Right inside one of the nodes, perfect spot.
I like the I like that there's a commercial node. Well, I like following commercial nodes, but it seems like we've kind of already muddied this one up, is there's very little commercial. That whole south east side, there's a little tiny spot of commercial, and all the rest we've got as residential. It seems like we already started a trend of it not being commercial, unfortunately. So I'm kind of on the fence about that.
Okay.
I mean, our comprehensive plan map, so it shows it as transitional. The zones being requested are implementing zones in the transitional zone. The focus area talks about higher intensity uses on arterials. And so, CCM and CCS are both higher intensity uses. And that commercial node is one of those specific things, and it doesn't have there's no radius to it really. I think it was intended that, hey, this intersection is going to develop as commercial in some way, shape, or form, and then it's the adjoining properties have to figure out how to make that work, whether it works in their plan and their vision on how their property develops, on what they think they can sell, on what they think they can develop. But I mean, if we're strictly looking at the future land use map and how it fits, it does.
Do you have anything else?
No, we covered it.
Okay, let's go to number 2. Amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the goals and policies found in Post Falls Comprehensive Plan. I think we just were covering most of that.
Yeah.
Nancy, thoughts?
Well, I think, I think it's, the goals and policies in the comprehensive plan have many points to it, and, maintain and enhance resident quality of life. That could be something that could be said. Yes, putting some businesses there would be great because residents are closer, like to pick up a pizza or whatever the case may be. There's truth to that, but then we also have residents saying, this is really going to decrease my quality of life. And so I think it could kind of go either way. I mean, I see some good points. I see some points there that it meets and covers, and others I think are all up to interpretation.
Anything else to add?
I mean, I think Nancy's right in so much that the comprehensive plan has lots of goals and policies, and definitely not every project will meet every goal and policy. And I think in this case, there are goals and policies that are met, not every single one. But I think the applicant and the staff went through a significant number and talked about them. And I think that there are enough of those presented to us to support the application.
Let's go to number 3. Zoning is assigned to following considerations such items as street classifications, traffic patterns, existing development, future land use, community plans, geographic and natural features.
I think this is one of the most important ones when it comes to looking at our transportation master plan.
Mm-hmm.
So regionally speaking, there's the Kootenai Metropolitan Planning Organization Master Plan, which is our regional planning for streets, and it has Greens Ferry as an arterial, and it has Prairie Avenue as a principal arterial. So we have 5 lanes going east-west, at least 3 lanes going north-south, probably a little bit more than that, eventually speaking. And so it's hard to look at it today and see the vision for the future. But the fact is that our transportation master plans dictate that we are going to put traffic in those locations. That's just the regional transportation master plans say that. Those are our planning guidelines that say, hey, this is where we're going to put the traffic. And so you put a whole bunch of, and the other thing is that if we look at this tonight, and we're here just to look at what should the zoning be, right? Not whether it should come into the city, but what should the zoning be? And so if you ask yourself the question, well, what other city zoning should it be? It's at the intersection of two arterials, and both of which in the future, by, you know, whether we like it or not, are gonna have a lot of traffic on them. This is the this is the correct zoning for that. It's a commercial type zoning. It's not a single family zoning necessarily. It's supposed to be a higher intensity use. And so I think that the traffic patterns, the street classifications, the community plan, which is the transportation master plan, I think that all points to that direction.
Other thoughts?
You know, I think that as it stands with community plans, it could also be argued that there is a urban renewal district very, very close to that. It looks like that was created in 2018. And as a section of that, it's pursuant to Idaho Code, the city shall aid and cooperate with the URA in carrying out this plan and shall take all actions necessary to ensure the continued fulfillment of the purposes and objectives of this plan. Urban renewal is both a public-private partnership to support growth and economic development and a direct partnership between the city and the Urban Renewal Agency to expand the city's economic base, create jobs, and improve public infrastructure. And that's just in part. But that says to me that really the Urban Renewal District really we should try and build that out first. That's what it says to me.
But if you do talk about growth and economic development, the idea of neighborhood commercial services, what is proposed there,
Yes,
does seem to fit.
What is proposed there? As I said, on the southeast corner of that commercial node, if you look at it, it is primarily residential. So you know, it could go both ways. I don't know that it's a bad. I don't know that it's a bad thing. It would just be great to have some of the other areas built out that are already in the city, that we already know what they're designed for, that there's a plan for them, and then see what that becomes. But you know, that's my thought.
Okay.
I can't disagree with you, Nancy. I think you're 100% right in that there's a lot of commercial in this area. And I just go back to that our job here tonight is to determine what the appropriate zone is, not whether it's the right timing. That's a city council decision.
True, that is, yes.
Other thoughts? Kevin, anything?
Yeah, I think to secure the neighbor's view, I think that there ought to be a level put in the agreement for the height of the storage units, and a 108-foot building on that corner just seems out of place to me. I mean, I live right down the street, and I'm trying to think of a 108-foot building in Post Falls. Not too many of them, you know. And to make it okay out there on the prairie it just seems horrific to me, because you don't know what you're going to get once you approve it.
Right.
Yeah.
To give everyone a bit of scale, the Ross Point Water District tower out there, that thing, that's 150 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just for visual scale.
Yeah, it's too big.
Again, those things that come in during development agreement.
Right.
Okay, let's move to number 4.
Real quick, for
Yes.
just a point of fact, the location is not within the boundary of an urban renewal district. just wanted to
Correct,
make that
yes.
clear.
Neighboring but not
Yes,
within.
neighboring, yes,
Yeah.
correct.
And
I think
currently,
we covered that.
there is no height restriction in the current draft development agreement, so that could be a proposed added language.
Okay. Number 4, commercial and high-density residential zoning is typically assigned along streets with higher road classifications. I feel like we've covered this previously, but is there anything else to add? I think, Ray, you talked about the fact that it is inevitable that those roads will continue to be developed and be.
Yeah, it is inevitable that they're gonna be, I mean, the master plans say that this is what the size is gonna be, and if so if developers and the adjoining property owners don't pay for it, then the taxpayers end up paying for it as part of a project, a city-sponsored or highway district-sponsored project. That's how Prairie Avenue has been built out already, to the east over in Coeur d'Alene, and, moving from, I guess it would be Ramsey all the way west to Meyer. That's all highway district, grant funding, federal funding. So, this is an opportunity for our transportation master plans to get built at the expense of a private developer, not taxpayers.
Other thoughts?
No, sir.
No, I think I'd like to add, I think everybody knows kind of my ideas here, but I do understand that tonight I have no vote as to whether this is annexed into the city of Post Falls or not. And I can give opinions, but that's all they are. My job, putting my hat on as a commissioner tonight is to decide if that would be appropriate zoning. And in the end, with some restrictions, I think it could be.
Okay. Let's move to number 5. Limit or neighborhood commercial and lower density residential zoning is typically assigned to properties as they proceed further away from higher intensity urban activities, ensuring that adequate land is available for future housing needs.
I mean, this isn't necessarily applicable because they're asking for the higher classification zoning, and it's in this urban intense area, not intense now, but planned to be intense based on the comprehensive plan.
Agreed? Yep. Let's go to number 6. Industrial zoning is typically assigned to properties with sufficient access to major transportation routes and may be situated from residential zoning. We know that that is non-applicable. So, other thoughts, comments, conversation?
So let's talk about building height a little bit. So our R1 code, single-family code, says houses are limited to 35 feet. And if that is also, and I think that's the same as the county zoning, it's 35 feet in height.
Seems right.
I think typical commercial zoning, I mean, I think we're at 55, is that right?
45.
45? 45 for commercial. I tend to shy away from, I mean, obviously 110 is pretty high, but
45 seems kind of low, though. Huh?
40, I'm comfortable with half that, so 100, or so 55 gives the opportunity for, I mean, I don't see a hotel going out there, but I don't even know if it really matters based on what the applicant has said, what they plan on doing. It's probably irrelevant, and so 55 is probably appropriate. So I would support
think it's just about what the building across the street they just built is on Prairie on the south corner on the.
It's probably 45.
Yeah, it's about that.
It's probably right in there. So.
Yeah, again, based on what I'm seeing, I feel like this is more for us to make us feel good about it than anything, but 55, I mean, that makes sense.
I mean, I don't know if it's, I mean, at some point, there's 55, 85, 105. You know, it's, it's a taller.
It's a magical number.
It's a tallish building, but, based on what they said, it seems pretty functional at 55. And if the city council feels that, you know, that would be inappropriate, then they have the ability to adjust that accordingly. Ready for a motion?
I don't know, Nancy, you had talked about, you had mentioned restrictions. I mean, I'm assuming height was one of them. Was there something else?
Yeah. Well, I think that would be overall, we talked about some storage units, right? And I guess those wouldn't have that nothing would get higher than that for any reason than that. Okay.
Well, that's not true.
Oh,
They
okay.
do have multi-story storage unit facilities.
Yeah,
They
I would
do.
think we should limit storage units to 35 feet, which is the same as a single-family house.
Okay, I would be comfortable with that then.
Okay.
And John, is it in the development agreement that north 20 acres is limited to storage?
Don't have it memorized. I just know that the sewer can't facilitate anything other than borderline very minimal usage, so an office worked. I do know that multifamily was restricted to like less than 17%.
Okay. So, okay.
But that, once again, you can add that in if you want.
I don't know if that's appropriate. I think it's probably,
I think Field's looking that up right now.
So for the northern half of the property, only low-impact uses generating less than one service unit, which is 5,000 gallons of sewage per month per 5 acres of land, would be allowed to be constructed on the northern half of the property. And those uses must drain by gravity mains into the Greens Ferry sewer main, providing service to the southern.
right, so that's super limited.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so to that end, I will move to recommend approval of the Joseph Family Trust annexation, file number ANNX-22-7, finding that the requested zonings meet the approval criteria in Post Falls Municipal Code 18.16.010 and 18.20.100, as outlined in our deliberation, and direct staff to prepare a zoning recommended to be provided to City Council, including development agreement conditions limiting the height in the CCS zone to 35 feet and the height in the CCM zone to 55 feet.
That was a mouthful of a motion, but we do have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Hampi,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Kimball.
Yes.
We're going to take a 5-minute recess. have everybody come back in. All right, we'll go ahead and open the final public hearing of the evening. John, take it away.
Okay, so yes, the Hargrave-Hathaway annexation, file number ANNX 228. Once again, we're looking at not the annexation, we're looking at just the zoning element of the annexation with council to determine the annexation elements. The applicant is Kimberly and Brett Hargrave. The owners are Kimberly and Brett Hargrave, as well as Will and, I'm guessing, Ute Hathaway. I don't know how to pronounce that one. What? Uta. Uta? All right.
How did you not get that one?
You even got
I know now, though.
Yeah.
So anyhow, they're looking for a recommendation of RM zoning in support of approximately 9.63 acres of an annexation request. They desire to construct about 77 townhomes or less and retain a 31,000 square foot commercial lot. Like the other mix zones, this does require a development agreement which can have development restrictions embodied within it. Proposal is as you see here. It is just a tad west of Chase Road and Pole Line along the north side. It's along the north side of the Montrose development and just west of the Black Stallion lots. So current land use is larger residential lots in the county. Physical characteristics, there's none significant for topology or vegetation for this site. It is over the Rathdrum Aquifer. Water provider for this would be the East Green Acres Irrigation District, with the City of Post Falls providing sanitary sewer services. I'm not gonna go over the housing stuff. We already went into that in the intro tonight. I do wanna look at some of the RM designed elements. You have a minimum lot size of 4. You see for products such as duplex, twin homes, and single family, the maximum height is 35 feet in that RM. All other structures is 45 feet. The reason for that is the RM zone allows for up to 20% multifamily and 10% commercial, so the 45 feet goes towards those other uses, which I'll go into in a bit. Open space requirements, the RM, unlike the CCM that you just heard, the RM does require a 7% of the total site to be designated as open space. The applicant has submitted an open space plan that go along with their application. You can see here they plan on doing the townhome option of the RM. You can see the green, more like, looks at this time, passive recreation, some other green passive recreation. They do have some amenities they do want, but that's up for the applicant to discuss the kind of amenities they would want on this. You do see a trail connection that they're planning, as well as a trail system that would meander back to the proposed improvements along the north side of Pole Line Avenue. This right here, which I'll show, it might show a little clear, this is about that commercial site that they're proposing here. So here's the permitted uses. That red, that's that commercial location. But here's where in the code, it said you cannot exceed the 20%. And so that's an option for someone in an RM to ask up to 20%, as well as up to 10% for the neighborhood commercial. Because they're planning on doing townhomes, meaning units on their own platted lot, they may be on a 0 lot line, but it'd be no different than any other single family home as far as building code and or the MLS. They'd be, you'd own your house and you'd own the property that it's on. They're proposing 0 multifamily, so they're not asking for any. I know that in some of the commentary as far as this public notice, there was a lot of mention of multifamily. I just want to make it clear they want to do townhomes, single family townhomes. Commercial restrictions, they are capped. The proposal in the development agreement, based off the 31,000, is to cap it at 7.4% of the, actually, I think it's the annexation area is what it states in the development agreement. So we're looking at the zone change criteria now. Amendments to a zoning map should be in accordance with the comprehensive plan's future land use map, as well as the amendments should be consistent with the goals and policies found in the comp plan. So the next slides will start tying into those review criteria. Future land use, it's low density residential is its designation. So you can see here, this category encompasses all types of single family residential uses up to 8 dwelling units per acre. You can see here, I highlighted, I did the math, 77 townhomes on the 9.63 came out to about 7.9 dwelling units per acre. So this would make them eligible to request that RM as an implementing zone with that low density. You see here, here's the implementing zones here that are allowed to be requested for. Looking at the low density, it does look at being consistent with the focus area analysis. Central Prairie is where it's at. It's right on the southern extent near that southwest corner. If I can get the mouse to work, right there, and the blue star. Support provision for a variety of housing types. There's also some note of being able to handle certain traffic volumes. The road classifications, as you see here in the green, they are minor arterials. So in the staff report, the engineering department said that the minor arterials are designed to accommodate traffic volumes of 6,000 to 15,000 vehicles per day. Pole Line Avenue is estimated to have 2025 volumes of 1,700 per day and 2035 of 3,000 vehicles per day. Looking at the goals, grow and sustain a balanced, resilient economy for Post Falls, providing community prosperity and fiscal health, maintain and improve Post Falls small town scale, charm and aesthetic beauty, maintain and improve Post Falls transportation network, on pace and in concert with the need of the planning objectives. So again, here's Pole Line Avenue. There's their development site with I cited it in the previous public hearing, and again in this one. With the development of Black Stallion, you received the city received the improvements along Pole Line Avenue. You can see in the plan they did intend to extend Miss Hannah Avenue back to Pole Line, and with development they would improve the northern portion of the trail, connecting it to the north side with some improved pedestrian connection. Therefore, that would kind of be in line with Goal 6. Goal 7, plan for and establish types of quantity of land uses in Post Falls, supporting community needs and the city's long-term sustainability. Protect and maintain Post Falls natural resources, including clean air, soils, river, and aquifer, and minimizing light and noise pollution. Maintain the city's long-term fiscal health. Looking at the policies, kind of gone over these in the previous public hearing. Maintain and enhance community level service, foster long-term fiscal health in the community, enhance residential quality of life, promote compatible, well-designed development, and implement goals and policies of the comp plan. Policy 2, looking at being consistent with future land use map, compatibility with surrounding land uses, infrastructure and service plans, existing and future traffic patterns. You saw that analysis in the staff report and the compatibility with those two elements. And I'm going over the goals and policies at this point. The staff report does go in a little further analysis. Policy 7, encourage the development of off-corridor access and circulation for commercial and mixed-use areas abutting limited arterials. Encourage compatible infill and redevelopment of vacant and underutilized properties. Policy 50, ensure that there adequate land is available for future housing needs, helping serve residents of all ages, incomes, and abilities through the provision of diverse housing types and price levels. This policy ties back into the Land Use Planning Act and what I mentioned earlier this evening about the kind of one of the purposes of the Land Use Planning Act in regards to housing and for jurisdictions. Policy 27, work to improve street connectivity in all areas of Post Falls, improving walkability, public health, safety, and transportation efficiency. Going back to this with development on the north side, you would get that, as well as future phases of Montrose, you would get that as well, which I'm going to touch on that here in just a bit. Looking at the third criteria, zoning is assigned following considerations as street classifications, traffic patterns, existing development, future land use, community plans, and geographic or natural features, all to encourage a balance of land uses and help Post Falls remain desirable, stable, and a sustainable community. So, what I try to do here is communicate what I know at this time. We've recently received a major PUD amendment and subdivision plan for Montrose. They're looking at phasing in their portion south of Poline Avenue. So you see that at this location. That's their current plan. You can see their pedestrian network they intend to construct going east and west, connecting to Clark Fork Parkway, which would then bring you up to Poline. This site being proposed here, that's their proposal. You can see that extension of Miss Hannah down to Poline Avenue. What the black denotes is in our transportation master plan, there is identified at some future point in time to look at a bridge of sorts to make that connection westerly and eventually connect Poline to McGuire Road. The green, that denotes, at such time, we have currently 2 users on this rail line. At such time, they are no longer used. The city will go talk to that rail service provider and discuss providing a green trail from Montrose to downtown through the city center planning area. You see here, I couldn't get the picture in very good from the proposed subdivision that was approved at Coleman Acres. So because it was small enough, I was able to go draw in those lines. There is Coleman Acres just to the east. That development, they haven't started it, but it is an approved subdivision to the east. So for all intents and purposes, outside of a couple county islands, it may be feasible to attain those frontage improvements on both the north and south side, meeting the road classification requirements. Back to this, as you see with roads with higher speeds, you know, these are the kind of uses that are generally compatible, you know, going from like parts of a collector to arterial. As you go to more of your local street, in some minor arterials, it's less dense. So I'm looking at that because, as I stated before, as you increase speeds, you try to reduce the number of points of conflict of intersections along those. We've already kind of gone over what the traffic volumes could be on that site. Looking at criteria 4 through 6, commercial and high density residential zoning. Typically, it's long streets with higher road classifications. So there you have it. These are it's a minor arterial. So the road will be designed to handle significant traffic, which would make it compatible with some commercial uses. Limited or neighborhood commercial and lower density zoning is typically assigned to properties as they proceed farther away from high intense urban activity areas. So acknowledge that there is no high intense urban activity area near this, so it does lend itself to some lower density, hence that future land use designation of low density designation. The last one deals with industrial zoning, which they're not asking for, so it really wouldn't be applicable. Here's the agencies that were routed. We received comments from the police department is neutral, school district is neutral, CUNY County Fire and Rescue, they comment that they're in partnership with the city throughout the review and permitting process. So a lot of times they intervene and make their comments at the time of either site plan or subdivision. Highway District, they're in support of this. And Department of Environmental Quality, they had no environmental impact concerns at this time. Any questions for me?
Questions for John?
Yeah, one really quick. So in order for an RM zone to be appropriate in the low density residential, it has to be 8 units per acre or less, is that correct?
That's, yes.
Okay, so would it then be appropriate to limit the density in the agreement to 8 units per acre to keep it in conformance with the comprehensive plan?
Yeah, and that's what they attempted with the 77 as a cap, is you took, if you get the 9.63 divided by 77 came up to 7.9.
Right, and I agree with the math. I understand the math there. It just doesn't say it in the agreement, in the
Okay.
written part.
Yeah, so that should have been an add-in, yes.
Good catch. Anything else for John?
John, can you go back to the traffic count slide, please?
And I'm only going to answer to a certain point. Rob's here. He can answer more detailed
Thought you were done
questions.
with my questions. Of the 2035 projections, when was that done? Because we definitely wasn't done before the growth, right? I'm hoping.
2014, Rob just said. I will say this, that the proposed amendment that Montrose, at this point in time, plan on going forward is removing about 300 multifamily units that were approved in that area to the north. So they're converting their multifamily units to single-family lots.
And the only egress for those right now would be either through Montrose down Clark Fork or back out pole line to Chase, right? Because there is no other exit to get to McGuire from there. Because they blocked that off a couple of years back.
Hold on. Just so it needs to be picked up, so if
I'll let
you're-
Rob answer that.
Okay.
I think I know because I live in the general vicinity, but.
Commissioners, Robert Paulus, Assistant City Engineer. So currently, from this location here, you do have Clark Fork Parkway, which does go down to the south, connects with Midway Avenue by the elementary school, which would go out to McGuire. And then you also have Santiam Drive, which doubles back up to Pole Line Avenue. That was a temporary road access point that was put in when the railroad crossing was created to allow for the elementary school.
So it still funnels them down through Montrose, though?
Yes.
Yeah.
And when you were talking about the year that the traffic counts were done, yes, they were done. Our existing traffic counts were done in 2014, with the 2035 volumes being the city of Post Falls at about around 90,000 in population. And that also takes into account that 3,000 volume with that bridge over the Union Pacific Railroad. And that's really what's driving the additional traffic coming in this area.
Perfect. And is Clark Fork classified minor?
Yes.
Okay.
It doesn't exist right now, though, does it?
It does exist right now. It is a 2-lane roadway with no urban improvements, no curb gutter, no sidewalk.
Okay, so it is actually running through there.
Yes, so Clark Fork is
Okay.
a urban roadway, 36 feet in width, up to just north of Snoqualmie Avenue, and then it reduces down to a 2-lane roadway. That was done to provide additional access and emergency services to the
Okay.
area.
Okay.
One thing to note, John had me look into this earlier today. I didn't get him an answer in time. We do anticipate that Clark Fork Parkway will probably have to bounce about 200 feet further to the east to accommodate a future bridge at that location.
Any other questions for staff?
I don't.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll invite the applicant up.
So Brett asked me to start off here with the open space slide.
Oh,
so-
okay.
Thank you.
So good evening. I'm Brett Hargrave, property owner at 1349 West Poline. And so I'll apologize. Our engineer, Kyle Cotton, is stuck in Chicago, so with canceled flights. So I'm the winner today to come up and present. So I just wanted to reiterate just a couple of things and then point out potentially a few other options or a few other points of interest on this. Number one is that on the density, because I think that there's been lots of comments and concerns about the density going in, and that is, you know, with 8 units per acre being allowed, we're maximizing that, but we are following that up to its fullest potential. The other thing that I wanted to address is there were some concerns, you know, about privacy, and as John also pointed out, that these units are only allowed to be up to 35 feet in height, which is the same height as a single-family home. So there's no difference in you know, views blocked or, you know, somebody peeking in your backyard or whatever. That potential is exactly the same there. The other thing that I think is really noteworthy about this, and this goes to protecting what I think a lot of people are also really concerned about, but are sometimes a little bit reserved in how they present themselves, and that is, frankly, their property values. That's a really big concern, and it should be a concern for everybody. But thankfully, the City of Post Falls has some pretty good guidelines on what you can and can't do for townhouses. For example, you cannot use vinyl siding, and not that there's anything wrong specifically with vinyl siding, but it doesn't have the same durability as brick, stucco, stone, fiber cement, products like that. And so over the long term, you have, you know, a better product in not using the vinyl siding. The other thing is the city has put together some code requirements to offset facades, and so giving the building a varying look. There's also a requirement to have a bit of a themed, if you will, approach to your development, but also requiring a minimum of 2 varying options as you go through. So you can't come in and, you know, have one set of townhouses look, you know, very colonial and the next one look completely out of place with, you know, some sort of salt box look. There has to be a continued theme that goes through there, and yet still require a varying look, you know, to help, frankly, protect the value of the development and your neighbors' properties as well. The other thing that I want to just reiterate, because I think it's probably the most important thing, is that we are talking about individual home ownership. This is not a development to be sold off as a you know, multifamily group. It is our design and intention to hold on to a unit or two to service our own family as well. The reality that we see is that, you know, Post Falls as a community is experiencing some pretty rapid expansion, and with that rapid expansion is a rapid climb in property values, and the ability to buy is getting really tough. And doing townhouses like this gives us the ability to provide a little bit more of a diverse and competitive housing option for those that want something that is a little less maintenance and gives gives professional housing for those that are interested in something, in a product like this. And so we want to meet that need. One of the other things that I do want to address as well is the ability for the commercial space. And I think that there's some concerns when somebody hears commercial space, especially after this evening. You're talking about, you know, in previous discussions, commercial space and what it can do out on 41 and Prairie and that sort of thing. And that's not what we're talking about when it comes to a commercial space. There's 31,000 square feet of lot space, but in that we're talking about a maximum about 4,000 square feet of building capacity space. And what we are looking for in there is very community-centered, like a bakery / coffee shop. We're looking for opportunities for, mom and pop to come in, lifestyle businesses to come in. Something that the goal is to provide services that people want to walk to, and provide a commercial space that is open and inviting for a community that wants to walk, inviting Montrose, Black Stallion, and the developments to the east of us there along Pole Line. And so that's the intention of that commercial space. We're not talking about restaurants. We're not talking about fast food. We're not talking about convenience stores that can drive a lot of traffic. We're looking to develop something that will encourage walking traffic, and so that is the goal. And I believe I think that's everything that I want to present. Are there any questions that you have for me?
I don't think so.
I don't have any.
No? None? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Public comment? I'll take them all. A what? No, okay. In favor, not wishing to speak, William Hathaway says, my wife and I reside on the west half of the proposed annexation. We've lived there for 16 years and support the annexation. We must have did we run out of public hearing comment? Okay, well, we ran out, so I've got wishing to speak. Is it Tyler Mort? Thank you for getting creative, too.
No, not a problem. I'm Tyler Mort, live at 1340 West Mishana in Post Falls. Born and raised here. I sell real estate here and do some building. I have a small building company and do a little bit of developing with my uncle and dad. And, I look at this and I think the drawings are beautiful, but I just look at the area. I look at what's surrounding it. It's all R1, R1S. There's a reason why the meadows, the prairie meadows and the meadows is the most sought after development in Post Falls. It's because bigger lots. It's because of elbow room. It's because of having shop space. I've yet to meet a buyer that comes into town from Seattle, California, Colorado, wherever they're coming from, that says, I want to live in a townhome and on the prairie, and let's call it townhome what it is. It's a duplex, it's a duplex, and I think no one's opposed to the annexation. I've talked with neighbors, people in the existing development. No one's opposed to the annexation. They'd like to see it stay consistent with what's there, especially when part of the access is off of Mishana. I mean, everything in there, everything in Black Stallion's quarter of an acre, third of an acre, all the way up to, I think there's one in Black Stallion at 0.79 acres. And so you start looking at that. I'm the one building in Black Stallion right now. I'm building all those homes. No doubt that you'd put a nice product in there, Mr. Hathaway, but I haven't sold a house in there under 800 grand. So you start looking at that and people that are buying bigger homes, shops, bigger lots, and then we got, a townhome project right across the way. I get it. I'm in the business. More lots means more money, and higher density means more money. It makes it more desirable. And as far as if you were to ever sell it or whatever, you know, it makes it more desirable. But just from citizen that lives there and what's already in that development, I look at that and I just go, man, how much more high density does Post Falls need? Just come in off of, come east off of, from Spokane, and what's the first thing you see when you cross the state line? It's apartments. You know, there's lots of duplexes. There's lots of townhomes. So, again, no qualms that it'd be a nice product. I'm sure you seem like a great guy. I think you'd probably do a great project in there. I just look at what's surrounding it, and I just don't think it fits. I look at the road system in there. Pole line's essentially a dead-end road, and I know that's a huge concern about everybody, whether the studies say it can hold it or not. But, you know, 77 lots, 2 cars apiece, 100 and some odd cars coming through, accessing either through Miss Hanna or right up the school zone on Clark Fork. So just some things that I look at, and when you look at what's surrounding it and why that area there is a desirable area, it's the bigger lots. It's the bigger lots, and it's the bigger, the ability to have shops. So, again, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. May have got just a hair out of order in the sense of in favor, neutral, and opposed, but we'll sneak back on track. In favor, wishing to speak, Elizabeth.
Good evening. I'm Elizabeth Godby here. That's how you say it.
Thank you.
I live at 1251 West Dan, and I just wanted to speak in favor. I'm a nurse in the area. I work at all the hospitals in the surrounding area, and all the hospitals in the area are having pretty big staffing shortages, and we are hiring expensive contract labor, and one of the number one concerns is the lack of diverse housing. No one can find housing. The area speaks for itself. There's no reason why contract labor that comes in shouldn't stay. It's just they can't find places to live, and townhouses, well, I mean, everybody would love to be able to buy 10 acres on the prairie. It's not feasible, and townhouses are a good option for professional housing. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. Also in favor, wishing to speak, Jonathan, is it France?
France, like
France.
a country, but
there we go.
But spelled the German way. I think that's
there you go.
Thank you, Commissioners. As stated, my name is Jonathan France. I'm at 806 East Polston. I am in favor of this project. One of the things that I particularly like about it is the fact that it is individual lots, that it is individual home ownership. I know there's a lot to do with multifamily out there, and there's some undesirable aspects to large multifamily projects. But I think when you get to a project like this and you see that there's individual ownership, you get that pride of home ownership. I think that goes a long way. Some of the other things, one of the other aspects that I do like about it is, you know, I certainly appreciate everything Mr. Mort said, but not everybody has the ability to buy an $850,000 house or property. You know, as there's a lot of housing issues that are going on right now. I believe the median household or the median sales price for a single-family home here in Kootenai County just crossed the threshold of $500,000. That's getting really difficult for a lot of folks. We're under a quarter of the county can actually afford a median price single-family home right now. I view projects such as this as a potential answer for those problems. We've got the ability to put forth some housing in a manner that can accommodate some folks that don't have the $850,000 to $1 million to be able to buy a house, but they can still come here. They can still get their piece of the American dream, or perhaps the Kootenai County dream. I think it provides some real solutions to a lot of the things that we're looking at. And for that reason, as opposed to coming in with a true multifamily project, I do support this style of project here, something that I think could be realistically attained by folks. Thank you for your time.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate it. Or wishing to speak in opposition, it looks like we've got Tracy Matheson and Haley Bennett. Okay.
Hi, my name is Tracy Matheson. I'm at 1257 West Poline Avenue. I am on the property adjacent to the Hargraves and very much appreciate your brother getting up here and speaking about affordable housing in the area and the fact that you had a nurse come in and talk about, affordable housing. I definitely respect that and I'm for it. But you can't say in 1 minute that you want to make these affordable townhome duplexes and then talk about contract labor. Because is temporary workers that are in here for contract labor going to buy a townhouse or a duplex? It kind of seems like it's coming from both sides. And it is a congested area. It is a dead-end road. It's on my property line, and I've known the Hargraves forever. Until this, I really respected them and liked living next to them. They were great neighbors for a long time, Very few incidents over the years. But the fact that they're trying to do this and act like they're invested in the community is disheartening. And I will never view it the same. I am adamantly opposed to it, and I wasn't going to get up here and speak. My daughter told me to behave because I get very passionate, because it's on my line, and I get myself in trouble, which is very true. And I think, honestly, that Tyler said everything in the sentiment that we're all thinking. So with that, I'll shut my mouth before I get in trouble.
Thank you very much. Wishing to speak in opposition, Mr. Howard Burns.
I heard you got 3 for the price of 2 today.
It's a good deal.
So the first thing is, it's a nice project in the wrong place. It should be R1S zoning. We talked about Cecil and 16th. Be great there. Greenstone has a huge chunk of RM property where I believe they're going to be doing some townhomes and projects on Prairie over in what I'm going to call the developing area, south of Prairie, Idaho, Greens Ferry. It's a big project. There's going to be some nice townhome developments there. At least I hope that's what they promised. That's where it should be. They should stay R1S. If it becomes some kind of multifamily, okay, let's call it single-family home lots, I still come back to the same issue. I talked about it before at Cecil and 16th. You've got to keep Black Rock from buying out the project and turning it into rental housing, because they have the right to do that unless you restrict it in the HOA. They can come in and buy the whole project and make it rentals, even though it's single-family lots and you thought it would be individual ownership. And you look and you say, oh, look, we got little lots and lovely townhomes. It's not affordable. You look at Coeur d'Alene, they've got 6 homes going up on little tiny lots down there off of Sherman Avenue, and they range from $2.4 to $2.9 million asking. So there's no guarantee about the price. There's nothing you can do to set the price for folks. So just keep it R1S, keep the RM where it's already approved. There's lots of it in town, and let's hope Greenstone gets building where they've already got the rights to. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Also in opposition, wishing to speak, Lynn Collette.
Hi, my name is Lynn Collette, and I live at 2960 North Radiant Star in Post Falls in the Prairie Meadows. My husband and I have lived in the Prairie Meadows development for 6 years. We've loved every minute of our life here in Idaho. We were drawn to this city because of its beauty, the friendly people, and small town country feel. The R1 zoning in this area has been in place for many years. My husband and I and our neighbors feel that a high-density project with 77 lots on 9.63 acres would not be appropriate in this location or be in the best interest of the community or city. The traffic on Pole Line is already becoming an issue, and this many units would contribute to the problem. The noise and light pollution would also affect our community and quality of life. These types of high-density projects are initially held to very high standards but as time goes by, it seems they often deteriorate, affecting the value of properties in the surrounding areas and city. As homeowners, we also feel blindsided to hear the owners of the property have been meeting with the city since last September, and we as residents found out about the project 1 month ago. I had contacted the city over the past few years and was told more than likely this property would be zoned rural residential in keeping with the existing homes and development in the area. If we all want a cohesive city we can be proud of, townhomes, condos, or apartments are not the appropriate fit for this location. We're counting on the City Council and Planning and Zoning Commission to please represent us as a community and vote no on the zone change to RM for this property. We feel the R1 zoning designation consistent with the surrounding area would be a much better fit and falls within the existing goals the city had in place. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak on this matter.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Manuela Armbruster?
Good evening. I am Manuela Armbruster and I live on 1480 West Broadwater Court in the Meadows. We purchased our property in 2013 because we saw that the existing laws and regulations of the City of Post Falls wouldn't affect our privacy and rights in any way. I am in strong opposition of the proposed RM designation for the Hargrave-Hathaway plot on the piece of land along Pauline Avenue directly south of our property. The proposed development of close to 80 townhomes is not in the best interest of the City of Post Falls. It will adversely impact our community services such as police, fire, water, sewer, and it will also add a lot of cars to our local roads like Pauline, McGuire, Chase Avenue, which are already impacted. And it will also cause a strain on our local schools, of course. The proposed RM designation is not in line with the future land use map created by the City of Post Falls Planning and Zoning Commission, which places this plot of land in the middle of a large area exclusively R1, single-family homes. A townhouse development would damage the small feel of the area as well as the aesthetic beauty of the area, which is in direct opposition to the City of Post Falls comprehensive plan, which states on the goals of the land use planning is maintain and improve Post Falls small town scale, charm and aesthetic beauty. What is going to happen with all the trees in our backyard? They are all just like a concrete wall. Finally, I'm very concerned about the adverse impact that this proposal zone change will have to our personal property and our property value. It is very upsetting to imagine 15 townhomes across our fence line on our property. That's on the plan. The nuisance of noise and loss of privacy would affect our quality of life immensely. Please do not empower a few greedy developers to destroy our and our children's lifestyle, which we have worked so hard to accomplish. They will not fool me by glorifying themselves, pretending they will do something amazing to our community. No, I don't believe it. I'm devastated that they only think about themselves and fill their pockets, but not about their fellow citizens who have to live and deal with the mess they create. I hope we can count on you and the city council members that they will see through this unbelievable proposal and that they will keep their promises they made to us residents when they were running for slow growth Post Falls. Please vote no for this proposition.
Okay.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
taking
very
the
much.
time to listen.
Also in opposition, wishes to speak, Gary Alvarado. Sorry, I probably could have picked a better route than making everybody have to get up and move around all the time. Sorry.
My name is Gary Alvarado. I live at 2443 North Ashraf Court in Black Stallion. Been an Idaho resident since I was 7 years old. I've seen a lot of growth. Post Falls was just a little couple of taverns when I was here. Other than my stint in the United States Air Force, I came back home. And I lived in the county. And I got to the place where I couldn't continue to take care of my 10-acre property, and we moved into town. Town was great because pole line was basically a dead end. Once they put in, I think it's North Parkway or Clark Fork. We saw an uptick in traffic, a significant uptick in traffic. We've got Ridgeway Elementary School right down there off of North Clark Fork Road. So as I said, I've been here a long time. Growth is inevitable. Last week when I was here, you guys talked about the best interest of the city. You guys were talking about this new policy and you were going to make some amendments to it. And you voted it in. And I didn't have the ability at the time to address certain things. But I have to ask you, who is the city of Post Falls? You as the commission are not. Individually you are, but not as a commission. These people out here are the city of Post Falls, with the exception of Mr. Manley, who lives in Washington, and the Hargraves, who live in Utah. So 50% of those people over there do not have any stake in this game, skin in this game, other than to enrich themselves. So when we take a look at the amount of traffic that's already there, you have to ask yourself, 77 units times 2, because typically they're going to have 2 vehicles. Where are they going to park? I'm sure the project looks really nice on paper. And it does. As he said, nice project, wrong location. R1 throughout the entire area. And now we want to do these high-density apartments, basically condos, townhouses. Yeah, they might sell them now, but in a few years, they want to rent them. And pretty soon, you're going to have vehicles parked alongside pole line. Where else are they going to park? Green space, we talk about green space. Take a look at that. It's very small. They're not going to have a lot of green space. They're going to have homes there and cars. If you don't believe me, because if you've never driven down, go down Parkway or Clark Fork into Ridgeway, and you'll see going into that area, cars are parked on both sides of the road. And it's narrowed because you've got boats, RVs, all the way down through that whole neighborhood. Why? Because they can't park in their garage. Where are these people going to park? You have to ask yourself, where? 2 vehicles per person in that place? I don't think so. The other part, oh, you don't have it up there. Miss Hannah. Right now it's just this cul-de-sac right there. There's only one way in and one way out of Black Stallion.
25 seconds, just so you know.
Okay. They're going to be coming through there like crazy. If you don't believe me, go just drive down there and you'll see the black patches where people are going racing down that road. Twice, they've almost taken out my fence. Vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Not that it matters, but I actually live in Post Falls. And I run Pole Line Avenue, and I run Clark Parkway, so.
Duly noted.
I don't run.
Yeah, I don't either.
In opposition, also wishing to speak, David Collette.
And if you
My
want, I
name's
could change
Dave
the
Collette.
slide to the
I
map.
live on Radiant Star. And first question, are the roads big enough for a fire truck to get down?
You can go ahead, I was going to say, you can go ahead and go through your comments and we'll make notes and we can address that as we get to it.
Okay, if somebody parks on the road, can they get a fire truck past them? Now, did he get his realtor's license? If he did, who's gonna sell them? And I hear you're gonna move out of the neighborhood. You're gonna move somewhere where it's rural. You're not even gonna be there. So, okay, I was telling my neighbor about it. He's a cop. The first words out of his mouth, the crime rate's gonna go way up. So, I mean, it's all R1, residential. So why are we putting all those houses or all those townhomes in there for everybody to look at? They're gonna look like apartments. You won't be able to tell the difference. So, that's it.
Thank you, sir. Real quick pause when we do public comment. It's bringing to our attention, obviously, one, how you feel, but two, if there's specific things that we need to be aware of. Obviously, traffic's an issue and those things. One thing I would really strongly suggest is let's keep it to that. Let's not keep it to accusations or where people live or things of that nature. Let's keep it on task because we have a very pretty clear parameter that we have to work from, and the personal feelings and how you feel about an individual and where an individual lives doesn't really matter in this case. So, that being said, also in opposition wishing to speak, Ava Doman.
My name's Ava Doman, and I reside at 1557 West Broadwater Court. I'd like to comment on this. As of July 2022, the new annexation criteria now says, is the proposed zoning district consistent with the vision for the area contained in the currently adopted Post Falls Comprehensive Plan? The Central Prairie Comprehensive Plan, Appendix A, discusses multifamily housing along Prairie Avenue and commercial development along Prairie Avenue. If this is the case, why are we considering a Coeur d'Alene Riverstone wannabe in the southwest corner of the Central Prairie that is thriving with single-family neighborhoods? The Central Prairie Comprehensive Plan, Appendix A, also outlines a focus of commercial uses where traffic volume exceeds 4,000 vehicles per day. We covered this already, and currently Chase and McGuire don't even connect on pole line. I will tell you, the plans seem to be very conceptual and very premature. The project narrative document for the Micah Station annexation and subdivision indicates the proposed subdivision supplies important commercial space opportunities. According to LoopNet, we currently have over 500,000 square feet in lots reserved for commercial construction. Ray just said there's a lot of commercial in this area. To say this project supplies important commercial space is vague and may or may not be true. Commercial space in this part of the Central Prairie is not necessary. Why don't we fill the existing Tedder Business Center with thriving businesses instead? Why don't we follow the city's comprehensive plan to focus commercial development along Prairie Avenue? One additional item from the project narrative indicates access through this 9 acres is a continuation of the street called Miss Hannah Avenue. To me, the terminology of Miss refers to young unmarried women or girls under the age of 18. And seems to be enjoined with another female name, specifically Hannah. Why are we perpetuating terminology with a Southern United States reference and a female-related name in a street in northern Idaho. Perhaps I have completely missed the point. Miss should be more of a verb, meaning fail to hit, reach, or contact. We appear to want to be progressive in terms of housing, like a big metropolitan city in Western Washington, and yet we are certainly not progressive in our terminology. This development does not meet land use goal number 3, to improve and maintain Post Falls small town scale charm and aesthetic beauty. This development is a Western Washington copycat.
45 seconds.
Even the developer of this project acknowledges the proposal for 80 townhomes in his email on September 27th, 2021, quote, "Our concept is not what we typically see happening right now in this area." Aside from making a lot of money, why has he changed his mind? While I am in support of annexing the 9 acres into Post Falls, I do not believe the proposed development and rezoning to the residential mixed area is in concert with the Post Falls Comprehensive Plan for the Central Prairie. Keep this property as R1.
Thank you. In opposition, wishing to speak, Douglas Williams.
Douglas Williams, I live at 1557 West Broadwater Court in the Prairie Meadows, in the Meadows. Greetings, councilmen and women, city planners and officials. I believe you have all taken an oath of office, which included an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. When was the last time you actually read the Constitution? Yesterday? Last week? Last year? Ever? A lot of people believe that something is constitutional when in fact it isn't even mentioned in the Constitution, and a fallacy is promoted and sold to the people who have no idea what the Constitution says because the people have not even read it or studied it. I also assume you have read and are familiar with and have studied the Post Falls Comprehensive Plan, growth areas, focus points, future land use maps, and land use goals. You are now contemplating the Hargrave-Hathaway annexation. The developer has put forth his plan for this project, in which he has eloquently put forth the fallacy that the proposed land use conforms to the surrounding area. If you read the emails between the city planner and the developer, it appears that the planner aided the developer, almost guaranteeing it will pass. Is that conspiring and colluding? Is your criteria for services the only criteria that you use? What about the criteria of input of the citizens? I am sure the developer has made all kinds of assurances regarding how the property will look and function. But how does lower income property look in 10 years or 20 years? Who and why would you put an unsightly pimple on the face of pristine housing, R1 that surround this zoning area? Read and study your comprehensive plan, the land use maps, and especially the land use goals, your ordinances, the ordinances describing low-density residential and high-density residential and mixed-use zones. Any assumption that this project fits into the surrounding area or the prairie use focus area is ludicrous and ignorant or simply delusional. I believe you have taken an oath to uphold and defend the comprehensive plan and city ordinances as fully written. I expect you to keep your promise and deny this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Also in opposition, wishing to speak, Jean O'Neill.
Hi, my name is Jean O'Neill. I live at 1452 West Broadwater Court, I am vehemently opposed to the RM zoning request for the Hargrave-Hathaway piece of land. And I actually feel really hopeful coming here tonight to talk to you because watching the 2 previous annexation requests, I see that the 3 criteria that you use are first, looking at the future land use map for the city of Post Falls. And for me, that's this is a very clear case where that piece of land sits very solidly within R1 zoning. There's literally no other pieces of property adjacent to this piece of land that is anything except R1, not even an R2. It's all R1 everywhere around it. And those of us who bought in adjacent to this piece of land, we detrimentally relied on the fact that that piece of land, if it ever was developed, would be also R1. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. Not used to public speaking. I'm used to momming. We detrimentally relied on the fact that maybe one day that land would be developed, but it would be probably single-family homes and not townhomes. The second criteria that you guys are looking at are the Post Falls Comprehensive Plan. And just looking at the different goals in the comprehensive plan, the first one that kind of caught my eye was to maintain and improve the provision of high-quality, affordable, and efficient community service in Post Falls. And it concerns me the strain that this many houses on this small piece of land would cause to our schools, our fire, our police, our sewer, our water. These are all things that we need them to work effectively for us all to enjoy our community services and our community. The other one that kind of caught my eye is, and probably the most important one, is just to me, is to maintain and improve Post Falls' small town scale charm and aesthetic beauty. And I think if you were driving down the road and looked around everywhere and saw all these single family homes and then came upon townhouses, it would just look strange. It would not maintain the aesthetic beauty. And while it sounds like a lovely, it sounds like a lovely development and a lovely idea, it just doesn't sound like the right place to put it. And I think it aesthetically would look very strange to have single family homes and then a townhouse development. And then, kind of on a the third thing is the traffic. And I feel like everybody has really effectively spoken on the traffic issues along Pole Line. It's where that section of Pole Line is, that might be deemed a minor arterial road, but it's really a neighborhood road. It's stops the intersection there will be very busy with the addition of 150 extra cars. I just wanted to say, from a very personal note, one of the reasons that we made kind of an unconventional choice to buy along a train track was because for us, we have many children, and for us it was really important for them to be able to play freely in our backyard and kind of have a carefree childhood. And it upsets me a lot to think, I know 35 feet doesn't sound like a lot, but when you shove 8 townhouses against our fence line, 35 feet is going to still be second-story houses that are going to have 8 families who are going to be able to look down into my backyard and see my children playing. And I feel like when we bought the property, we relied on the idea that it would be a consistent use of land for that particular place. So, and one thing that I haven't heard mentioned that we had kind of discussed
15
amongst the
seconds.
neighbors was just the presence of a very large gas line that runs along Pole Line. I'm not an expert in gas lines, but it does somewhat concern me of the idea of a large gas line and like a high concentration of people who will be living along it. For the people who are going to potentially buy townhouses there, I think. I would like to hear more discussion about that. So anyway, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, appreciate it. Also in opposition, wishing to speak, Andy Shepard.
Good evening, commissioners, and thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. So 2 years ago, our family, we decided to relocate our business here to Post Falls. And I am all in favor of growth If you see our business, it is Grow Ignited. I'm all in favor of economic growth, but I'm also in favor of following a plan. You guys did a phenomenal job putting together your comprehensive plan. When we're working with businesses, helping them grow, we always see that the most success comes from following that plan. When we chose Post Falls to relocate our business to, we looked at your comprehensive plan. We relocated from northern Indiana. We really didn't have any idea about the growth that was going on in the community. We just saw a quaint town with charm, and we would be close to family in Washington. When we moved in and looking at the plan, we looked at the development around. Everything around our property, by the way, we live at 1558 West Broadwater, and the back of our property points directly at the new development, proposed development. When we looked at that plan, we saw, hey, this is a great area. It's going to maintain quaintness. It's going to maintain the charm of the city. And it's all zoned R1 everywhere, except for there was one triangle behind us. What is the likelihood at that point, as a family moving in, that you would assume that would become a RM or a zone other than R1? Very unlikely. So we thought it was very safe to purchase that property. If we look at the market currently, the real estate market, and I know that housing costs have risen, and I will, just to speak to the contract nursing, I will say Northwest Specialties Hospital. If you look at that hospital, their culture that they promote, they have very little to no contract nursing because of their culture. Their amazing culture. We have an amazing culture in this city, from what I can tell. We don't want to change that. We want to keep drawing people into this quaintness because that's what drew us. But when we look at the real estate market last year versus this year, last year in June, there was 463 active listings in Kootenai County. This year in June, we have 1,006 active listings. Last year, we had 1,650 homes sold, which was up 11% from the year prior. This year, we have 1,362, which is down 18% from the year prior. I would like to encourage you guys to follow your plan. You have a plan. There's a time and a place. I'm not saying that this isn't something that is needed by our community, because it really is. We do need some townhomes. This is the wrong area for this development. We need to stick to our plan so we're successful moving forward into the future. Thank you guys so much for the opportunity.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Any others? And that being said, I'd like to give the applicant an opportunity to come up for rebuttal.
There's been a lot of valid concerns and a lot of comments, mostly pointing to concerns of, from as I interpret it, mostly concerns of interpreting to property values is what I'm hearing, and I understand that, and there's it's a very legitimate concern. And one of the benefits of this residential mix is that it comes with this development agreement that we're already talking to the city about and what this looks like. And so there's a very strong ability for the city to have some good input on how to protect land values of the neighbors. And so I would just encourage that thought process. As far as the concerns on density, I know that 8 units per acre or 77 units on 10 acres sounds like a lot, When we talk about high density, just for a point of reference, I am a construction manager. I do currently reside down in Utah. I am working on a 10-acre project where we're doing 400 units on 10 acres. That's what I'm doing right now. So 77 on 10 is just, it's not, you know, really a high density. When you consider what is allowed in R1. R1 is up to 8 units per acre. That's what's in the code. And so if it wasn't townhouses, you know, individual lots in there would eliminate green space and take away any sort of ability for a community feel. It would just be stacking, you know, units in there. And nobody wants that next to them either. And we certainly aren't interested in a project like that. But it is a possibility and is a reality. And so we feel that this proposal is by far what would give it the highest and best use, add value to the area, add value to the city of Post Falls as a whole, and with that limited commercial opportunity, add value to, you know, that neighborhood and surrounding neighborhoods. Thank you.
Any questions for applicant?
Nope.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions, point of clarification, anything else that we need from staff?
Does the fire truck fit down the road?
Do we want to address the fire truck down the road?
Sure, if that's a zoning issue.
We got the fire department here.
It's not really a zoning issue, but if you want to address it.
Come up to the mic so I can be recorded.
Make it official, thank you.
When projects come to the Planning and Zoning Commission, there's still such a global picture that the fire department doesn't get involved with access and things like that until we start getting further into the plan and start finalizing things, because there are so many variables that come into place. But we do make sure that road width is acceptable, that even with on-street parking, we have access. And then we look at alternate means of ingress and egress as much as we can. The fire department's pretty limited, especially when it comes to residential development, on really all we can talk about is access and water.
Thank you. All right. Well, I haven't gavelled out yet. So
Do
if you have a,
do we have any idea when the bridge is planning on being built to connect McGuire to Poline?
Robert Paulus, Assistant City Engineer. Our current transportation master plan and our capital improvement plan from our impact fees has it identified as a long-range project. So that would mean a project that should be constructed by the year 2035. Right now, we are in the midterm of that, which goes through projects through 2025, so somewhere within the next, well, between 2025 and 2035, depending upon when dollars are available in the impact fees. We are in the process of starting a transportation master plan update. That would be starting this fall, so sometime within the next 12 to 18, well, 18 to 24 months, we would have an update which would better identify where those plans may occur.
Thank you.
anything else?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll close it out. Let's go to discussion. Amendments to the zoning map should be made in accordance with the comprehensive plan future land use map. Thoughts?
I don't think it is.
Yeah.
I don't think it's.
You want to expand on that a little bit?
Well, if we look at the future land use map, everything in that area, all around that area, is designated as low-density residential. So this just doesn't fall within the future land use designation.
I mean, it is low-density residential on the future land use map. And by definition, in our comprehensive plan, that is up to 8 units per acre. And I think that that's what they've presented, and that's what we can condition in the RM zone. I think that was intended to be in the development agreement. And so I guess technically speaking, by definition, it meets that requirement. May not feel like it.
Further thoughts?
Yeah, my thought would just be the fact that you're sticking all those cars back in that corner, and you have to shove everybody past one of our schools that's already overcrowded in Montrose, or run them all the way back out to Pole Line and all the way down to, if they want to egress down to the 90, they got to go all the way down Chase, which puts them past another school. So I don't know how I got.
Okay.
I mean, the town definitely needs the housing options, you know, but, and I appreciate everybody wanting to maintain their housing value, but I think what we do is we decide what's best for a community overall, and that includes everybody, just not the $800,000 property owners. But I do think, in my personal opinion, that this is a great plan, but a little too early. It's just you shove all those cars back in that corner, and I'm down there quite a bit. It's crazy. There are cars parked all over Clark Fork Parkway. But those would be my thoughts on it.
Let's go to number 2. Amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the goals and policies found in the Post Falls Comprehensive Plan.
You're looking at me.
I'm going to work my way down.
All right, perfect. I think there are goals and policies in the comprehensive plan that are supported by this. In our first public hearing tonight, the staff talked about affordable housing and mandates in state code that really kind of frame our comprehensive plan. And it's not just affordable housing, but it's a variety of housing types. We really don't have any townhomes here in Post Falls to speak of. The fact is that, and I don't know if anyone, I know I personally don't like the fact that, I mean, personally I feel great that my house value is quadrupled. Not excited about the fact that it has priced so many working class people out of home ownership. And as a planning commission and as a city, and according to state code, we have an obligation to provide a variety of housing. And I think it's important that, you know, I don't think anyone moves here. Someone said it tonight, no one moves here, or people who move here aren't looking, they're buying an $800,000 house. They're not looking to buy a townhome. That doesn't mean that there's no market for that. It means that the people who probably grew up here and are working in a you know, decent job, but they just can't afford a house. Maybe this gives them an opportunity for a route to do it. And we have that project on McGuire that we looked at, or just off of McGuire a little bit ago with those twin homes. I mean, this is very, very similar in a similar area. I mean, that's surrounded by 5-acre tracts. And I think that the goals and policies are laid out pretty well by staff in the staff report. And I think it meets a lot of them.
Nancy?
Well,
Kevin?
I think that of course we do need a mix of housing, and from the standpoint of financial higher end to lower end, and I believe that we've had a lot of that come before us, a lot of that. I think we've had a lot less, we've had no R1S come before us. And this is in an area that really was largely designated for R1S, and then they got some exceptions to it, as in the Prairie, as in the Meadows, R1S. Prairie Meadows is still in R1S, however, there were some lot size adjustments through some, I don't know if it was a PUD or what it was at that time. What we don't have a lot of is larger lots. We've got a lot. We've had a lot of smaller lots come before us, not a lot of large lots. So I kind of disagree that we're in any way, not servicing the community with more affordable housing. I think we are, and I think that one gentleman said it great. It's probably a great project. It's just in the wrong place.
Yeah, I think that we've had a lot of smaller stuff come before us, but I think we've had a lot of smaller stuff in multifamily. The idea of actual home ownership, I hear a lot of things tonight, and I think a lot of it is emotionally driven, in the sense of, one, I think we've all looked. I think we've had staff look, and we've never been able to find anything that says a project like this or anything even remotely like it's going to lower your homeowner or your home values. It's not happening. I live in Post Falls, and you hear, well, these townhomes are going to come in, they're going to be dilapidated, and it's going to cause this, that, the other. I drive through subdivisions all the time, and I see garbage stacked up all over the place, so you can't put that on this kind of a project. I think when you really sit and you look at it, is there an argument for maybe it not being the right place? Absolutely. But does it fall within the comprehensive plan? I think it does. But again, that's just my opinion. Let's move to number 3. Zoning is assigned to following considerations such as items of street classifications, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, geographic or natural features. Kevin, you kind of hit on this a little bit. Your biggest concern, obviously, or one of your bigger concerns was traffic.
Yeah, that's just it. So you have, I think the average is, 2.6 cars per house. So if you add that up, it escalates the cost, the count of cars. And if you have them coming out on there, and if half of them egress down into Montrose, that's going to be a nightmare during school time. So I don't know. I'm just a little confused on it myself.
Nancy?
Well, I think, again, the future land uses, I don't agree that it fits. So by looking at the same map, I don't agree.
I mean, as an engineer, when it comes to traffic and whatnot, at 77 houses is a PM peak hour volume of right around probably 65 cars, trips in a PM peak hour.
Right.
So, obviously, so that's an average of about 1 per minute. And if we were to have a minute of silence, and imagine sitting there at an intersection for a minute, that's the added traffic that comes to this. I happen to live in the vicinity of Chase and Pole Line. I drive through that intersection very often. And in the morning peak hour, it's incredibly rare to see more than 3 or 4 vehicles in the intersection, much less on a particular leg. And our transportation master plan has Pole Line as a minor arterial, and it's got Clark Fork as a minor collector. I mean, those are streets that they're meant for that. They're meant for traffic, and 1 car per minute in a peak hour is not going to do anything significant. It's just the reality of it.
Sure.
With regards to the the community plan, I mean, that's the sewer stuff, sewers in the vicinity.
Yep.
There aren't any geographic features that prohibit it. You know, if there was a traffic problem, Rob would have Rob Paulus would have been our assistant city engineer, who's an expert in traffic, would have gotten up and talked about it, would have been in the staff report. And again, it's a zoning thing. And if we talk about the fact that there's a little commercial component to it, I mean, whether that actually gets built out or not, I mean, I don't know. But, you know, how cool would it be to have a little coffee shop there?
Yeah.
Or something like that. And that the neighborhood could use and walk to. So I find those as benefits to the community as a whole.
Well, I certainly didn't hear anyone say that it was certain that Clark Fork was going to be, or what's it called, Clark Fork Parkway, was going to be developed to its full standard prior to this development going in if we annexed it. And right now they said all the way down it's just a 2-lane smaller road. It's not any larger, or it's a pretty small road is what it sounds like right now. So will it be built out and able to handle more traffic? Yeah, it probably will be, certainly, but there isn't any guarantee, or no one even said that was going to happen before this development. So I don't know why we think that's going to handle all the traffic.
Well,
I don't agree. I don't agree.
I mean, from a traffic standpoint, are you talking about the area that goes across the field that's just 2 lanes?
Yeah.
Isn't that the road that we're talking
This
a
is
lot
the-
about
yeah,
that's
right.
going to connect over to the schools?
It narrows here and then it
Yeah.
widens
Sure.
when it hits the homes.
Right, so it's small right there,
Yeah,
yes,
right.
yes.
I mean, Prairie Avenue's 2 lanes.
Yeah, and you
In
think that
spots.
the traffic's great on Prairie Avenue?
I mean, it's not a problem. I mean, it's not a capacity issue. There's no capacity. It's not as if there's, and also on that little 2-lane stretch, there's no roads, there's no intersections right now.
Right.
And when it does build out, it will build out to the full width.
Sure, when it does build out, yes.
But at this point,
I can
there's no,
understand.
there's just no traffic. There's no actual traffic issue
It'll
with
move over
that,
200 feet.
capacity-wise. And even, I mean, and it's, yeah, and a 4,000 ADT and 60 peak hour trips. I mean, adding 60 peak hour trips, it's not gonna kill it.
No, there's
It's not a
definitely some.
problem for you?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really not. I mean, the engineering part of it is just, it's not there's no capacity issues. And
There's benefits for sure. The commercial space would limit vehicle miles, or, you know, it would knock some off. I mean, I'm saying it's a great idea. We need it.
Let's go to number 4. Commercial and high-density residential zoning is assigned along streets with higher road classifications. We'll just move on from there because that's not applicable. Limited or neighborhood commercial and lower-density residential zoning is typically assigned for properties as they proceed further away from higher-intensity urban activity, ensuring that adequate land is available for future housing needs. Anyone care to comment?
with regard to this, I mean, lower density housing, at least by definition, and limited commercial, which is what is basically being presented, is further away from those higher intensity urban activities, which is, you know, the Southeast Way corridor.
Any other comment?
Have none.
77 townhomes. What was it? 31,000 square feet of commercial?
4,000 square feet of commercial building space.
31,000 square foot.
Square
lot,
foot of
yeah.
lot. 7% open space, 0 multifamily. Let's go to number 6. Industrial zoning is typically assigned for properties with sufficient access to major transportation routes may situate from. Residential zoning's not applicable. Other thoughts?
Have none.
Nancy, anything else?
No, I think I made it pretty clear
Mhm.
where I stand.
Right.
Ray, anything else?
Nope.
Well, I would look for a motion at this point. Again, purely a recommendation for
Right, this
zoning.
is a recommendation of zoning to city council, not whether it should annex, whether it's the right time to annex. This is a recommendation based on the planning criteria set before us. And so, to that end, I would move to recommend approval of the Hargrave-Hathaway annexation file ANNX 22-8, finding that the requested zoning meets the approval criteria of Post Falls Municipal Code 18.16.010 and 18.20.100 as outlined in our deliberation, and direct staff to prepare a zoning recommendation to be provided to City Council, including a density cap of 8 units per acre in the development agreement.
We've got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Hampi,
No.
Ward,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Kimball.
Yes.
Administrative and staff reports. Do we have anything tonight?
None.
Anyway,
I said there's no administrative or staff
okay.
report.
Commissioner comments.
Oh, I got them.
Snacks next time would be great when the meeting's long.
Yeah.
Especially on culinary.
Yeah. After
Right.
9, we need snacks.
Yeah, true. I did probably drop the ball on that one.
Sorry.
Anybody else?
Thank you for putting together the staff reports that you guys do. They're thorough. So you guys do a great job.
Thanks.
The 400 pages had me
Yeah.
on the edge of my seat.
And everybody that showed up, thank you for showing up and telling us what you know and giving your input. The next place you need to show up is the city council. They're the elected officials who make the final decision. You know, we basically follow, the landowner's legal rights and if they fall within the parameters. It's hard for us to be emotional, but I definitely see the landowner's standpoint as well.
Yeah, it's as volunteers, it's not our volunteered position to exercise our emotions.
Yeah.
Right.
We check them at the door.
Yeah.
Some of us, right?
No, all of us. Anything else?
That's it.
I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
A second. Hey, let me second it.